SEM is taking off, which is amazing that there are this many people interested in this type of topic, and that the work that we're doing collectively is making a difference and is useful for you guys. So we're excited to see that. I know as a leadership team, we've worked really hard to make that happen. And then, you know, the other thing is that it's virtual. So this is all from the seat of your own home. So hopefully everyone's got a nice professional top on, and whatever is down below, lounging pants or whatever, good. No one needs to be in jeans. Everyone can wear elastic pants. It's fine. All right. So the first thing that we want to do is just make sure that everybody's oriented to Zoom. I think probably most people have actually used Zoom before. However, we just wanted to kind of make sure that everybody's aware of things. As one of us is presenting, you can move your mouse a little bit, and down below some of the directional little screens will pop up. On the left-hand side, you have your mute and unmute, and you have your video. So we encourage everybody to show their face. We know that it's a longer workshop, so you probably are gonna have to take a bio break, maybe get something to eat, maybe deal with your children, deal with your cat, deal with your dog. That's totally fine. You can video if you want to, but we do find it creates more of a community. And there's obviously the mute button. So if you can stay muted, that would be wonderful. In the middle there is a chat button. If you hit the chat button, you can talk to everyone, or you can actually drop down and talk to individuals. We actually have different people doing different things with the chat boxes. So Greg Baker is looking for your words of wisdom. We want this to be a really interactive conversation. So as we're doing our presentations and you have questions, please ask them. I think a lot of us have probably now gotten fairly used to doing online workshops. And the worst thing that can happen is for you to talk for an hour and nobody responds and no one nods their head and no one does anything, and it's radio silence. And that's not what we want. We want this to be interactive. So let's all work together to try to come up with some good thoughts and stump Greg, or perhaps the presenter. And then Andrew Whitlock is in charge of sending you guys information via your chat. So we're going to be doing small breakout groups, and the directions will go in the chat box, or the attachments will go in the chat box, and Andrew Whitlock is responsible for that. So he's sending you guys our words of wisdom or questions. And then the other thing is that if you don't know how to rename yourself, you can either right click on the screen that you see where your name currently is, or you can go down to participants, right click on your name there, and then it says enter a new screen name. So if it says I'm awesome, which I am, you can then write Wendy Gibson down below it, and then you can actually get your name. We like to just know who you are. So if you're currently on with a phone number, that helps us know who's in the room as well. And then some people are probably logging in with their computer and logging in on their phone. You have the option to merge yourself in your participant window. And Andrew Whitlock or Ann Joyner can help with that. So if you go to the chat box and you're unsure how to actually do that, Andrew Whitlock or Ann Joyner can help you figure out how to merge. So hopefully that's your orientation to Zoom. Let's try this out. Any questions? Greg, do we have any questions yet? You'll have to unmute.
I don't see any yet.
All right.
Oh, Neil Illett says this is awesome. Thanks, Neil.
Perfect. All right.
That's not a question, Neil.
I'm all about statements of affirmation. I'm in. I'm good enough. I'm strong enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. Okay, so the next thing we just kind of want to do is really extend a heartfelt thank you to a couple organizations and people that have really helped us. So our main funders and support are ACEEE and the U.S. Department of Energy, and we just wanted to really extend a heartfelt thank you. There's a lot of people on this call from ACEEE that are with us more than once a month working to help make the North American SEM Collaborative function and work, and without them, we couldn't actually do this. This is all volunteer time, what you see, on top of our regular jobs. And so without their support, we really couldn't do it. The Department of Energy has been a really close ally of ours. They've provided funding for the funding research that you're going to see, which we're really excited about. And honestly, just in general, providing support as well and encouragement throughout us getting up and running. So we really want to thank them. The other actually organization that I don't have on here is the EPA, which we currently have a board member of, which is Walt Tennyson. And so they're, putting some of their time and effort into it as well. So sorry, Walt, that I didn't put a little logo up there. And then the other way that we get support as well is also from our specific event sponsors. So we want to thank Clear Result, who's our silver sponsor. Thank you so much for supporting this summit. So we actually have to pay for the space. We have to pay for the Zoom call. If we were on site, we'd be paying for everything. And so this is just a way that we're recouping our costs. So without Clear Result, Cascade Energy, and VEIC, we really couldn't bring this to you. And so we thank you guys for committing, especially right now in this hard time, some cash to actually make this happen. So thank you very much. And then the other thing that I want to thank personally is teamwork makes the dream work. And so as you'll see coming up, this summit is really all about being better together. And I couldn't have done this, even though I'm here introducing this, I couldn't have done this without a group of people that have really helped us. And I gave everybody fun titles because that's what we do. So the Zoom queen is Ann Joyner. She is your host today. So she's in the background admitting people, working out questions, anything like that. The team wrangler, Andrew Whitlock, is constantly making sure that we're on time and making sure everything's coming in. So Andrew, I really want to thank you for that. For those of you that have been on the webinars, you know that Chad Gillis is an amazing facilitator and a Menti master. We appreciate him for helping make this and all of our webinars engaging and interactive. And then Greg Baker is the hall monitor and also apparently the coach of Ohio State from a couple years ago. He is, like I mentioned before, he's monitoring the chat just in case you guys have great questions. And I'm the worry wart, so if anything goes wrong, just know that I'm sitting there worrying about it. Or perhaps if nothing goes wrong, I'm sitting there worrying about it. But without this team, we couldn't have actually got the summit off the ground. And then the rest of the leadership team as well has really supported us. That's Brian Albert, Peter Bassett, Walt Tennyson. I know I'm missing somebody here.
Martin Lott.
Thank you, Martin Lott as well. Just thank you guys for everything that you've done supporting us, also submitting slides. So just wanted to take that couple minutes to really express my thanks. Caw-caw.
And for the record, we did not choose these. These are the images that Wendy chose that represent all of us. So
that's right.
I'm really curious about Andrew's person. We'll get back into that later.
So the agenda today is basically doing welcome and introductions, which we're in the middle of. Then we're going to basically talk about the national support that we're receiving ongoing. And by we're, I mean the SEM community as large, not just the leadership team. Then we're going to be talking about helping you, helping others. So in the space of DEI, it's about bringing everybody up equally. And so I'm excited to kind of both dig into some of the survey responses that we got from the last webinar and also highlight a program that submitted an abstract to the summer study this past year in the equity space to just highlight some of the great stuff they're doing with schools and looking at underfunded schools. So that's really exciting there. More brains are better than one. This is our MNV section. So we've got the best and the brightest coming at you, from evaluators to program implementers, people that got together in working groups to kind of overcome some of the barriers and generate some ideas about helping us through COVID and some ongoing barriers that we've had. And then participant insights. So because we're virtual and because of the feedback we got from the last summit, we decided to try to make this as interactive as possible with participants. So for instance, the OG&E school cohort conversation that Clear Result will be presenting on actually has participants in it, embedded in it, including one of the interns, which is really exciting. We've got Goodwill on here to talk about their commercial SEM and then also the city of Tacoma. Without being virtual, we wouldn't have that opportunity. So we really wanted to actually do something we couldn't do if we were on site. So this is an added bonus to that, which is exciting. Yeah. So just some housekeeping stuff. If you haven't noticed already, we're recording this so that you can watch it later tonight with some popcorn, because it'll be that exciting. There's going to be some action, some drama, some rom-com. And then just in case you kind of want to go back and listen to some of the presentations, you'll be able to do that. We'll be putting it up on our website. your opinion matters. We're going to be using Mentimeter a lot. Hopefully a lot of you guys are familiar with it. We'll be practicing here in just a second. But this is kind of how we're interacting with you guys, in addition to chatting me up or chatting Greg up, as the case may be. Like I mentioned before, getting stuff in the chat box is always really important. And then the other thing to know as well is that we'll be going into small breakout groups. There'll be 4 breakout groups throughout the summit. 2 of them in kind of into 2 chunks. So you'll be in the same group for 2 and then the same other group for 2 as well. So we're excited to hopefully get you guys some of that small networking stuff that you guys normally probably enjoy during a summit as well. So let's try it out. Chad, who's here?
All right, so if you've been to our webinars, you know we love doing Mentimeter polls. So open up a web browser on your phone or on your computer. Just open it up, keep that browser window open because we'll be going back to this poll. But go to menti.com, menti.com, and use the code 862485. 6. Interesting. Usually it's always 3 2-digit numbers. My head's exploding, so we have a 4th number. Or depending on how you're looking at this set of digits, it could be in a 6-figure or a 7-figure number. 8,624,856. I'm just doing that to impress Peter Thurkelson. All right, so we're seeing some organization types come in. Program administrator, consultant, evaluator, NGO, government, or participant. We think that hits everybody. We apologize if we've offended someone that is not represented. Their organization is not represented here. Just choose NGO. State authority. This is great.
Software developer.
Yeah, that's interesting. University, nice.
Can you say the code again, please?
Yeah, it's, move this out of the way, sorry. It's so menti.com, menti.com. It's 8624856. If you're looking at the screen share, you can see it at the top. Menti.com, 8624856.
I love the fact that a lot of people have abbreviated administrator admin. That's pretty amazing.
Like, they don't have time for that.
Yeah. I think I thought I said someone say farmer. Did I see? Yeah, someone's a farmer. That's wonderful.
Wow.
Welcome.
Nice. Yeah, seriously, welcome. You're a farmer that's into SEM. Or maybe you stumbled upon this thing accidentally. Welcome as well.
Yeah.
EMIS person, it's usually would be energy management information systems related person.
We've got maybe some participants. I see a resource conservation manager on there, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that might be our guest speaker. Oh yeah, he's waving his arms around in the webcam. Welcome, Perry Spring. Like M and V with the N, with the and is turned into an N. Clever. It's good. Good for Monday morning / Monday afternoon, depending on where you are.
Yeah, it looks like NRCan is here. That's great. USDOE. We got a gas utility.
Nice.
So I think what this is really just highlighting, right, is how big and broad our community is. And as we go through the next little while here, we're going to be able to share all the different ideas that we have. And so just hold solid in your space, right? In your knowledge as a, software developer is going to be completely different than a utility, which is going to be completely different than, the US Department of Energy in a really positive way. And so just make sure that you kind of hold that space tightly and just be strong in your opinions and, get some good ideas out there. We want to make sure that we also have a safe space for everybody too. So just make sure that you're polite as we're talking and sharing ideas and being collaborative and supportive. This is what we're here. Like I said, this year's theme is Better Together. All right. So we just wanted to just quickly highlight kind of what our collaborative objectives are. I don't want to go over this too deeply, but just really understanding that we're here to bring you guys together to convene the SEM community, to basically make sure that your interests are heard in the broader context, but also to develop best practices and help you guys come together to be better SEM community members and be able to share those types of best practices. So I just wanted to highlight that that's kind of what we're here for. Hopefully you think that between the webinars, the SEM Summit, and some of the other stuff, the research paper that we're doing, you're getting what you're looking for from us. We're always here for feedback. And then I wanted to highlight some of the activities from last year's 2019 SEM Summit. So from left to right, persistence and cost effectiveness. We saw a lot of interest in this last year, and we started the research paper, which you're here about. So we wanted to let you know we're moving forward on that specific strategic objective. Program integration. What came out of that was this idea of some sort of SEM program manual where everybody could look at what other kind of programs were doing with some data behind it. And we're happy to report that CEE was actually already working on what they're calling their program framework. And so they're getting ready to kind of solidify that approach. And so as opposed to kind of working in parallel with them, we're actually collaborating with them and just kind of here to support them through whatever they need and taking that lead on it. But just so you guys know, some sort of framework is coming out with the different programs, which is exciting. The negative savings, we actually created a working group, so they'll be reporting out on that. And then this idea of taking action, which is kind of helping you guys continue to move forward. That's the webinars that we put together. So we just wanted to make sure that you saw that we're taking what we learned from these summits and actually moving forward on them each year. Yeah. All right, so Anne and Andrew, this is where you guys are coming up. We are going to get into small groups and do little introductions. So we're hoping to get everybody in groups of about 5 to 7, where you'll have about 10 minutes to just kind of introduce yourself, give your name, your company, and you could talk about the first thing that you're going to do when things are back to normal, or perhaps what your SEM moment has ever been, either a big win from a participant, or if you're a participant, the amazing amount of savings you got, or perhaps kind of a breakthrough from an M&B perspective. So we're gonna give everybody a moment to get together in these breakout groups. And what you'll do is you'll actually see yourself kind of going into the breakout room. You'll have about 10 minutes. Once you have a minute, you'll actually see the clock start winding down, or maybe it's 30 seconds. And then we're gonna bring you back into those rooms. Any questions on that?
That was super fun. I don't know
We're
about
back.
you. That was awesome.
God, that felt good. It felt good to get to know people. With 117 people on this call, it was nice to be able to meet some good people. Hey, Greg, who's
Yeah.
one person you met?
I met, it's funny, I knew a bunch of people, but we met this gentleman by the name of Vestal. I'm going to get his last name wrong. Kessel.
Totoro.
Oh, yeah, with a T. From Berkeley, from Berkeley Labs, but he's based in Northern Virginia. He works on 50,001 Ready process and SEP. So glad to have you aboard, Vestal.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Hey, Chad, I think we have a Mentimeter.
Yeah. All right. I told you to keep that web browser window open. And if you didn't, you'll have to open a web browser window again. Go to menti.com, menti.com, and type in 856. What's one thing you learned about someone in your small group? Oh, I got it. Geez, I can't type this in. Well, while people are typing in, I will say one thing I learned, and I wrote down this equation David Goldstein shared, is your average speed that you have in a year is you take your frequent flyer miles divided by 8760, and that's your average speed that year. It's like how many miles an hour. And he was saying how much his average speed has dropped down since COVID. I'm a huge, David Goldstein just a,
Average speed dropped over 2 orders of magnitude.
Thanks, David. It's so great. Now, yeah, his average speed is more heavily influenced by walking, versus before it was not influenced at all by walking.
Oh, SEM is for gamblers.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I want to know more about that. Who wrote that? Tell me about it. And how do you win? I want to know if I can get the odds in my favor.
I know.
This is Brian Cromrine. I mentioned that in our group. I'm with Cascade Energy. Katie Harper gets, with Energy Trust, gets credit for that quote. I like that quote.
Is that a pre-COVID quote, Brian? Do you know? Is it?
Oh,
or has it been
definitely.
some- Okay.
Yes.
One of my first accidental quotes.
Oh, she's here.
Oh, that's really funny. Well, yeah, this will be something we need to explain more during happy hour afterwards.
Yeah. What about a lot of kale? How does a lot of kale and SEM relate to each other? Kale manufacturers.
No, they're both good for you, Wendy.
Oh.
And
Dang
it's
it.
not so good for refrigeration system.
Oh.
We had a facility that had some kale sucked into their ammonia system, and they kept operating. And it wasn't until they got into SEM and we had a treasure hunt and got all the right people in the room, they're like, hey, you know what, we should do something about that. And they finally did, and they saw incredible efficiency improvements in their refrigeration, which then translated to significant improvements in production. So a lot of other folks buying into SEM.
Kale is not an efficient refrigerant.
Yeah, you know, you're gonna have to take that off the label.
Kale, good for the body, not for energy.
I didn't know kale could phase change at different pressures.
That's
Oh,
so
that's
great.
awesome.
Gas.
All right.
Well,
Well, that's some
and-
good stuff. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
All right.
Yeah, another thing that I learned was Emily, she's actually doing some whole building energy metering, but they're enrolling programs for organizations for 8.5 years, which is really cool. You can make some changes there. And that was really inspiring to hear about that commitment. So yeah, super awesome. All right, caca.
By the way, that caca means flip slides, if you're wondering what the code was. All right, we'll now go to national support.
Yeah, so we just wanted to highlight two of the different organizations that have supported us. We're trying to support them. And so we've got Walt Tennyson with EPA, and we've got Ethan Rogers with the Oregon Department of Energy to just give us an update on what they're doing. There's some exciting stuff going on, especially in the time of COVID and kind of switching to virtual treasure hunts. And then also, I think Ethan's going to be asking us some questions. So Walt, do you want to take it away?
Sure, Wendy. Thank you very much. And thank all of you for coming today. Really, I know I appreciate it, and I know that everyone on the leadership team does as well. I'm Walt Tennyson. I'm with the US EPA's Energy Star program in Washington, D.C. And I just want to share a few updates with everyone about some of the things that we've been involved in. You can go to the next slide, Wendy. So this year was supposed to be the big year for energy treasure hunts with Energy Star. Last year, we sort of did a soft rollout of a campaign to encourage people to share the results of when they conduct an energy treasure hunt. And 2020 was supposed to be the big year when we got lots of people, energized and enthusiastic about going out and finding all this great low-cost savings and building energy teams and getting their management on board. And it was just going to be great. Well, then the pandemic hit, and a lot of people have postponed. Some people have canceled their treasure hunts, but there are people who are still doing it. And so I'm going to put a quick plug in for our campaign, because this is a great tool that you can use with your customers if you're promoting energy treasure hunts as part of your SEM program, because of what it allows them to do is to share some of the results that they found during your treasure hunt, and share that with Energy Star by just simply filling out a real simple online form. And then we provide in return some recognition. And this is recognition that they can use to celebrate their accomplishments and get management's attention, and also show that there's a lot of opportunities out there for energy savings. And that's part of what the goal of this campaign really is about, is to show people that there are a lot of things you can do without big capital investments to save energy. And energy treasure hunts are one way to do it. And if you move on to the next slide, Wendy, we have at Energy Star developed a real treasure trove of resources to help promote treasure hunts over the years, including guidance documents, We've developed a lot of what we call treasure maps, which are like checklists for commercial buildings space types. And part of the reason why we did this is because while treasure hunts have been an approach that's been used widely in the industrial market, we haven't seen it been used as much in the commercial buildings and institutional markets as much. And so we really went forward and created, I don't know, like 15 or so different treasure maps for different types of space types, plus some detail sheets, and there's some whole bunch of other stuff. But the one thing I just want to bring your attention to is we've also have released, well, actually, I'll be releasing it this afternoon when I post it on the website. But we've put out some tips on how to conduct a energy treasure hunt during COVID-19. So some tips on basically how to get organized, how to reorganize your treasure hunt, some tips for using some virtualization and remote analysis type approaches. And again, it's something that you can use, you can share with your customers, but you can also use this as a way to point out to people that yes, while there are certainly a lot of limitations in terms of what you can do in terms of on-site treasure hunts, people are doing them. We've worked with some companies that are doing this to develop these tips, and your energy program can find ways to continue to provide value to their, to your company or your organization during this sort of strange and unusual time. So next slide there, Wendy. Since this is the ACEEE Summer Study Week that focuses on commercial buildings, I have a couple updates that are very sort of commercial building focused. And the first thing I wanted to announce is that Energy Star will be launching a tenant space recognition program. We hope to have this out in late 2020 in the fall, in October. It will recognize initially office spaces, and there's a set of criteria that's similar to what we piloted earlier. But we hope to be able to expand this to other types of space types going forward. The process that you'll use to apply for recognition and participate in the program will also all be conducted through Portfolio Manager. Another thing we're proud to announce is we are been working on a calculator, a greenhouse gas calculator that will allow users to develop much more granular estimates of past, current, and projected greenhouse gas emissions. Currently in Portfolio Manager, a lot of the greenhouse gas emission calculations are based on national averages. And what we're doing with this calculator is allowing people to put in custom emission factors, regional and local emission factors, as well as some emission factors that are tied to specific ordinances. So for example, the New York City is, they have a local law L97 that requires some reporting on greenhouse gas emissions, and this calculator will have those factors built into it. So it will also be integrated with Portfolio Manager and our web services platform. So if you use those platforms, you'll be able to import data, and there should be some very simple user functionality to make it easy to use this tool. Last thing in the sort of buildings market I'll mention is that we are putting together a toolkit that's really geared towards local and state governments that are developing benchmarking and building performance ordinances. We get a lot of questions from different local governments, state governments that are looking at these types of policies, often asking us for some technical advice on different areas. And so what we've decided to do is to really consolidate a lot of the resources that we developed over the years into a standardized toolkit. And we'll be hopefully getting that out in 2021. You can move on to the next slide. I think many people realize that COVID-19 is affecting building performance and energy performance in a lot of different ways. We'll certainly be talking about that later today at the summit. But at Energy Star, we also recognize that COVID-19 is going to have an impact on building certification. So if you are working with customers or work with other people who use Portfolio Manager for certification of buildings, take a look at the guidance that we've put out regarding some flexibility in some cases for what you can use in terms of your benchmarking period, as well as some other guidance on some things that you should be looking at as far as certification. We've also granted some flexibility as far as visiting sites for part of the review process, the M&V process for certification for buildings that have been previously certified. You can find some more guidance about what we're up to as far as adjusting our certification requirements during COVID-19, again, through Portfolio Manager. We're doing some additional analysis to take a look at what we're seeing in terms of how it's affecting building scores. And the last point I'll make here is if you're working with industrial companies, you can go to the next slide, Wendy. If you're working with industrial companies, I encourage you to think about getting involved with the Energy Star Challenge for Industry, which provides recognition to plants that reduce their energy performance by 10% within 5 years or less. Over the past, earlier this year in the winter, we updated our guidance documents as well as the form that you use to report savings to better accommodate the use of regression-based models that are typically used in SEM programs. We think that encouraging your program participants in the industrial space that are part of an SEM program to get involved with the challenge is a great, is a great thing to recommend, because it will help to keep them focused on energy management following your engagement with them. And it also provides a way to allow those sites to get some credit and get some kudos for their accomplishments by getting an award from the US EPA and Energy Star. So you can learn more about this program at the Energy Star website, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And Wendy, those are my updates.
Thanks, Walt. I think this is actually really important and timely. One is kind of that idea that EPA recognizes that COVID changes things, as everybody does, and they're working on trying to figure out to make things more flexible. And then I know from my SEM experience, one of the things that participants are constantly talking about is how can we get recognized for the good work we're doing, right? And so unless your SEM program has a way to specifically recognize it is seen as maybe nationally, important and or just locally important, is the EPA has these types of programs. And while it's really exciting to see the tenant certification, I think that could be really important as we start looking into that the real estate management space around SEM. Getting tenants involved in that way could be a game changer. So it's really exciting. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely go to the EPA website. Walt, thanks so much for your presentation. And we will move now to the Department of Energy, who I think is going to be talking, my guess is a little bit about 50,001 Ready and kind of getting some feedback. So from what I understand, guys, get your Menti back out.
Yes.
Well, and maybe I'll just say, Ethan, as you're getting spooled up, I'll just say Ethan was and of course, many of you are doing polls in this, and so Ethan was a great sport. He and I were strategizing this last week, and he was like, and here are my 20 or so slides, and I was like, what if we turn those into and so Ethan is a wonderful, he's been a longtime ally of ours as well, formerly from his time with ACEEE and now for the last 18 months in his role with the Department of Energy. So Ethan, here we can pull up the poll questions in a second, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we kind of jump into those questions?
Yeah, so I just wanted to let folks know that, of course, the U.S. Department of Energy has been very supportive of energy management going back, gosh, a dozen years, right? When the ISO 50001 standard was initiated, the group, the U.S. TAG, to participate in the development of that, DOE was supportive of that. We have, as mentioned, we've been supportive of the North American SEM Collaborative. We have the Superior Energy Performance Program, which is a robust and rigorous measurement and verification protocol and way of achieving additional certification for plants. But most of our activity, especially this year, has been around the 50,001 Ready program and the online navigator. I suspect many of you are familiar with the navigator, but the reason why we're going to do a lot of Menti questions here is to find out just how familiar you are with the navigator and what value it has been providing to you, and what else it might provide to you in the future. So rather than me tell you about a program you may already be familiar with, the thought was, let's turn this to a bit of a Q&A. So if I say, I'm not going to do macaw, I think I'll go woof. There you go.
Fair enough. And it looks like some folks got to jump on this question, but it's great. So the first question is, go to menti.com again, if you've closed your browser or if you've joined us since we've had our first poll, menti.com, type in the code 8624856. And we'll have a series of questions. So Ethan, you can talk about what you're seeing here.
Sure. So, you know, the Navigator, or the Ready program is many things, right? There's the online platform, but there's also the different resources. You know, when we first put it up, there are 100 different things you could download from it. When we revised it at the end of, 2019, we simplified the downloads to 25 to match the 25 steps. And there is now a guidebook that can walk you through everything. And so you could just use that. And what we're seeing utilities do is some are just picking some of the resources, right? And some of them are using it as is, and some of them are partnering with us and creating their own version of it, their own, like Energy Trust of Oregon and Clear Results are a couple of our partners. You know, so they've got their own branded version of this that they can use. And so we want to know, you know, what is it that you're using? What features of it are you using right now? So it's like I can see a few people are not using it. I see gap analysis, demonstrate structured approach. I want to learn more. So I do, that slide deck that Chad mentioned is actually walks you through all the different features of how utility programs are leveraging the Ready Navigator. And so that's going to be available to you afterwards. So you're not going to see those slides today, but there will be something that you'll have access to later on. So you can just work your way through that and see the different features, lots of screenshots and things like that.
Ethan, one of the things I thought was interesting is that, and this is true, is that if you're doing SEM, you're 60 to 80% of the way there already, which is a really good thing to know. So if you aren't currently doing 50,001 Ready, pointing customers in that direction that are interested in some sort of certification or recognition, they're already halfway there, if not more.
Yeah, and yeah, so the Ready program walks you through 25 steps. You know, just breaks down the ISO standard into 25 steps, and there's a checklist, an online dashboard, and everything. And when you've done those 25 steps, you can self-attest that you've done that. Send us in your regression analysis, and DOE will recognize you as being 50,001 ready. So if you're not up for jumping into the deep water and going for a full ISO certification, if you know, if your SEM program is giving you, you know, the features and benefits you want, but you're looking for a piece of parchment, if you will, you can get that recognition from the Department of Energy. So, but it looks like people are interested in learning more, so we will certainly get you that information.
So it's really good. And again, to reiterate what Ethan said, you know, again, he did provide a wealth of good information in the slides, and so those will be provided to you after today to use as a resource and to study and to potentially reach back out to DOE to ask more questions. Anything else you want to highlight here, Ethan, before we go to the next question?
Let's see. Yep, I guess it's kind of scrolling through.
Yeah, I'm bumping down.
Okay.
Got it.
That looks good.
Okay. All right. Next, ready for the next one?
Yep.
Okay. This question, please describe features the 50,001 Ready Partner Platform has that are valuable to utility programs. I think the idea here, Ethan, right, is that, you know, how many, I'm not sure, but DOE has done quite a few utility program related webinars, like letting people know about in the DSM space, SEM space, in this partner platform.
Yeah, once a quarter, we're doing a webinar on the Ready program. Most of the people attending this are associated with the utility sector programs. And as I mentioned just briefly, so in addition to using the program, which is of course available on our website, anybody can go to it, can create themselves an account, but we also created a platform for programs to use or companies to use. And you don't have to necessarily be a utility sector program. We have companies that have become partners. And the idea there is that you can tailor it. We can work with you to tailor it to your needs. You can communicate with your cohort participants. You can send them friendly little messages. You can check on the status that they have. So like right now, you know, those of us within on the DOE side of the READY program, we can see how everybody's progressing along in the 25 steps. If a utility was creating a cohort within their partner platform, they could see how their partners are progressing against those 25 steps. And they could send them messages. They could create custom information for them. They could customize some of the materials. We have all kinds of case studies that can be leveraged, especially on our Better Plants or Better Buildings Solution Center. So all of these are resources that are available to help companies or program administrators and implementers simplify and standardize their programs, the way they're implementing their energy management systems.
So great, Ethan. I think it's one. I've been a fan of 50,001 Ready, as a lot of folks are. Clearly, you've got a lot of partners. But yeah, since the program's inception, and definitely that partner platform, adding this other level to really make it a very useful tool for program administrators.
And I just want to call out one question asked in the chat was, is there a directory of 50,001 Ready facilities that have certified? And Peter Thurkelson dropped the link into the chat. For anyone that is not monitoring the chat, they could grab the link to see that list of running facilities. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Great. We'll go to the next question, Ethan. In the Mentimeter poll. So in the last DOE Utility Sector webinar, we discussed almost a dozen training slide deck resources. How many of these can you name? It's a test for everybody.
I did not agree to.
So the names of these, the names of these are very long. So I would just suggest an abbreviated name such as the target audience. You know, because there are dozens of them. Yeah. So we need to do looks like we need to do a job of letting people know about these. Yeah. But yes, if you go to the Navigator, in addition to all the kind of informational resources about how to implement your energy management system, there are also a dozen different slide decks that we have posted that you can now download. Some of them are just very introductory. You know, what is the READY program? What is the Navigator? You know, what is energy management? You know, what's the ISO standard? And then some of them are very specific. Some are the slide decks you could use to do a 2-day in-plant training. Some of them are, one collection of slide decks is tailored just for implementation at government facilities. One of the slide decks is targeted for use by by program implementers. Another one has been used by some of the implementers that DOE has used in helping companies implement energy management systems.
That's so great.
So there's a lot of different resources there. I like the haircutting during COVID.
I know. I wasn't aware that was one of the slide decks. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's definitely, a little outside the box.
Well, we are here to serve. We're trying to break down barriers and catalyze economic development. So whatever it takes.
I think it definitely is one of the objectives of this thing is if you didn't know about these training slide deck resources, you do now. And second, I'll go out on a limb here, Ethan. I'll just say, I assume the haircutting during COVID deck does not exist. Is that? I don't want people to go there just assuming they're going to find that and be let down. That's great. All right.
I'm glad to see the ones managing program managers and utilities and federal organizations. And yes, you can download these and use them. You can modify them. Again, what we're trying to do is catalyze more implementation of energy management systems. That is the whole purpose of the Department of Energy's activities in this space. So here's the open-ended question. you can see, you go online, see what we've done. Many of you have been to our webinars. You've learned about what we've created. We would like to know, what do you need from us next, right? If we were to do another webinar, such as in September or November, what would you want to learn about? If you wanted another feature on the Navigator, what would it be? So tell us what resources the Department of Energy can help develop and push out to the marketplace. Trainings, yes. Carbon links, that's good. Complicated. I assume you want it more complicated or less complicated? I'm going to go with less complicated. Virtual trainings. Let's see, playbook examples. Okay.
We'll give folks about 20 more seconds here. So get your responses in quickly.
On-screen dashboard. Shorter password. Do we have a complicated password? I bet we do.
Apparently a 14 character.
It's one of those alphanumeric special character requirements.
Yeah. Case studies, seems like that's a potentially a winner.
That's popping up.
Tech videos.
This is very helpful. Yeah.
Well, we'll be passing this information back to you, Ethan, as well. And if Ethan is such a great sounding board and always is so wonderful at asking questions. So if you've got ideas, things you want to know from Ethan, you'll definitely get his contact information here at the end of this.
Yeah.
So with that,
I'm on my last slide, but you don't have my slide.
I know.
But
it will be in the deck.
It's
yes,
Ethan,
everyone will get it.
Yeah, it's ethan.rogers@ee.doe.gov, and I'll type it into the chat. How's that?
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, Ethan. And with that, we will move back to Wendy. Are you muted, Wendy? Yep.
Sorry, I have a new dog and it's decided to destroy my rug. So that's why I had to go on mute. It's great. Okay, so moving forward together. So this is really kind of following up on that webinar that we did for DEI and SEM. And basically, Chad, you want to go to the next slide? I looked at the survey questions that you guys had and kind of talked about it with the team. You know, how can we continue to move this forward? So some of the stuff that we heard was, you know, what more could be done to include DEI in SEM work? How can we leverage SEM to create more meaningful and impactful professional growth for minorities and women's? And cohorts targeting environmental justice areas to improve overall facility energy performance and support the community. And kind of from this, we came up with this 45, 50-minute kind of module here around actually getting you guys to start thinking about moving forward, and then I actually highlighting a program that has done some work in this space, specifically focusing around schools, curriculum development, and internships. So for the next 15 minutes, what we're going to do is break out into, yes, thank you, Kathleen. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're focusing here on bringing everybody up together. And so the first thing that we're going to be doing is breaking out into small groups. So Chad, if you want to go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so you're going to be getting a Word document with this survey. So this is the survey that we got back from you guys based on the DEI webinar. And you'll note that there's kind of two columns to pay attention to. One's the orange on the far right there that says not sure, and then on the far left it says don't have. And you'll notice that a lot of our programs currently don't have a lot of these things. So they don't have requirements for DEI contractors. They don't necessarily use a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens for informing program marketing or informing curriculum. So what we're going to do is break out into those small groups that we were just in and just start talking about how could you start moving some of these specific kind of questions forward in your own organization. And we'll give everybody about 10 minutes to just talk about this. And we're just looking for you guys to just start brainstorming. How can you as an individual, you as an organization, you as a program administrator, implementer, evaluator, start putting on this lens in your own space? So this is really just a list of ideas to get the conversation started. Then we'll go into highlighting a program that we think has seen some great success, but also some struggles in this area, which is kind of exciting. All right. Let's do it, Ann. Back into the breakout groups.
Okay, well, we'll move you back into your breakout groups. It went like 95% smoothly last time, but if you have any issues or challenges, you can leave your room and we'll get it sorted, or you can ask for help. Also, the file put into the chat box, if you want that, grab it now. It doesn't always transfer through into your breakout room. So I'll give you 5 seconds to download the file, and then we're going to open the rooms. Okay, here we go.
Wow, watching you guys all come back is fascinating. I told Ann it was like the running of the bulls, like everybody just stampeding into the room virtually at once.
Yeah, that was another fun breakout. A lot of good dialogue.
Oh, good. What was one thing that you learned? Greg, what are you committing to? What are you doing? What are you learning?
And I guess that isn't really the our discussion didn't commit to me to anything.
Greg like runs it out of the room.
But the dialogue was more of which should come first. Those things, and Anna brought Anna, forgetting where she was from. Oh, from Power Takeoff. She brought up a good point of having marketing / education come first, and then you can eventually bleed it into your workforce development and maybe requirements for contractors. Just bleed it in slowly to make sure you publicize this is where your organization energy efficiency program, SEM program, is headed, to kind of allow people to get prepared and to inform the public. But I just thought that was a kind of a good order of operations. Us engineers, we like to be analytical and type A. That's what I got out of our discussion.
Yeah, interesting.
So Marshall in breakout group 16 had a really good suggestion, and I think you should tell the group about it.
All right, Marshall, group 16, where are you?
Was this the one about the communities, Kathleen?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was talking about how, in terms of the diversity inclusion, thinking about RCM work and the locations that especially where we're working in factories or other industrial settings, sort of the locations around them, which are often in very disadvantaged communities, and thinking about what are the local pollution and noise or other benefits of the SEM work, and how can we think about the local impact of our work in that community, and use that both as an opportunity to sort of cross that fence line and bring people in, and also think about how that could tailor, what measures we're doing, when we're doing them, and trying to also sort of listen to what the community is looking for and use that as an opportunity to try to bring people together.
That is a fantastic
If I could follow
idea.
up on that. This is Perry. I said a very similar point in our meeting, in our little breakout. And this past week, I found all this online articles and evidence of the correlation between air pollution, racism, and COVID. And so we all are hearing the statistics about how many more people of color are having COVID. It's directly related to respiratory systems, as we know. Air pollution is a direct impact on the health of our respiratory systems. So, and where does this air pollution come from? From the consumption of fossil fuel energy. So we have a pretty strong responsibility here in SEM to take this seriously and find ways to contribute. So I think the first thing is, just like when people come to an open meeting, they say, I'm from the Salish, I'm on the land of the Salish people who were here for thousands of years before me. I feel like we have to start saying that about SEM and industrial sites. We have to acknowledge that industrial sites have created huge health consequences on people of color and people with low income. And we have to change that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting
Lucy
perspective.
Nyman here. I just did a paper for ICE. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it, Lucy.
I just did a paper. It's actually for this conference, but it's on equity and transportation electrification of transportation, and in doing some research, just like industrial locations, transportation disproportionately impacts the disadvantaged low-income communities with pollution. So it's location of highways, location of industrial facilities. So I'd echo what Harry had to say, taking benefits, improvements in the industrial performance and energy usage, and then translating that to how reduction in pollution could benefit the local communities would be a nice aspect of this SEM effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we jump into what was it, Zoe? I can't remember. Someone said something about workforce development. Yeah, connecting green workforce development opportunities to the local economy. Any other kind of thoughts on what we heard?
Just an additional thought. If you reduce energy use, you will reduce pollution. But there are other ways to do it that may not involve big savings in energy use. So maybe we ought to think about strategic emissions management, which is the identical process that we've been using in energy, but looks at data on emissions of various issues of concern. And maybe you have other dimensions of opportunity that didn't apply to just energy use.
Yeah, that's a good point, David. In fact, I know in some of the programs in Canada, they actually measure in greenhouse gases, not just kWh and therms. And so that may be kind of an interesting start around actually identifying those impacts that you're seeing, at least on a broad level. And then how do you start narrowing them down to the local economy, like Marshall mentioned? I think that's really innovative. It's a really good idea. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so kind of to that end, this tees it up really nicely. So one of the things, like I mentioned before, is that one of the abstracts that came into the ACEEE summer study was around basically helping schools in Oklahoma in a cohort, and also internships, which gets to that workforce development. So I know some programs, probably a little bit more on the commercial side, have internships, but this is a pretty unique experience. Also, I think Patrick's going to talk about some of their goals and maybe, you know, whether or not they actually were able to hit some of their goals and kind of lessons learned. So super excited about this presentation. Chad, do you want to pull it up? And Patrick Curry from Clear Results going to kick it off. And then we actually have both the energy champion and co-energy champion from Fort Gibson. And also, I believe, potentially the intern here as well. So we're really excited to have them. It's really nice to have a participant as well. Patrick, I'll let you take it away, and just you know, caca or something if you need Chad to slide advance.
I've heard caca, woof, all those things. So.
Yeah, that's right. Or make up a sound. I don't know.
Yeah,
giraffe.
pineapple.
Yeah.
If I yell pineapple, that's next slide.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So thanks, Wendy. Just, you know, a little bit of backstory about us. You know, I've been working with the schools in Oklahoma with Clear Result now for about 5 years. And we've made really good strides working with operational departments and maintenance facilities to make schools more energy efficient. And we've also learned a lot from some of our schools that, you know, when we came to them, they were already making the steps in the right direction. So we thought the next step for that would be to tear down silos between operations and maintenance, teachers and students, and kind of make it all one big conversation that everyone is working towards together as far as energy efficiency. So we work with teachers and hosting workshops and giving them in-classroom curriculum and all those things, because a lot of the teachers in Oklahoma just don't have a lot of resources to work with. They're buying everything on their own, as far as school supplies to paper that they're printing out to, you know, now hand sanitizer for the classroom. So we hosted a bunch of workshops and helped out there. And so the next step to kind of, you know, tie it all together was working with students. So full disclosure, when we started putting together the SOW for the internship program, we didn't set out to really make a big like DEI splash. It was just, hey, let's work with kids, because regardless of what district you come from in Oklahoma, a lot of them are kind of underserved, usually, economically. So, but as we started writing out what we wanted in an internship program, it really shifted that way, to really bridge the gap and provide access to students that don't always have that access. So one of the first things we did was just kind of like, we wanted to prioritize girls that don't always have access to engineering resources, or students that can't afford to go to STEM camps and things like that. So if you go to the next slide, you'll kind of see what our, one more slide. Yay, yeah, so you'll kind of see what our goals were. So they align with most everybody's, idea of an internship program: provide an educational experience, get kids ready for work, work with other students there within the schools. But the goals that don't always align with an internship program is just giving access and encouraging underrepresented students to take part. And as far as providing more access, one of our goals was, thanks to the utility, we were able to make it a paid internship program. I know that for myself personally, when I was in college, I wasn't able to take part in an unpaid internship program. So when I was working through my degree in construction management, I had to get a labor job for a construction company, while some of my peers were able to actually work, and do an internships in the office, and work a little bit more towards their degree path. So making it a paid internship and really focusing on minorities and students that don't always have access to certain things. So we started pitching the program around. Not a lot of schools wanted to take part or be that first school to kind of dip into the internship program. It was new. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of Oklahomans were just kind of proud, like, oh no, we will sort it out on our own. But one of the first schools to jump on was Fort Gibson Schools. And that kind of goes into our first question to our one of our co-energy champions is to George Kunzman, who has worked more with energy efficiency than I've been out of college. So I had a lot to learn from him. But George joined the program and started helping us recruit interns within the school district. So I'll kind of let him tell the group what appealed to the school district about the internship program, and why was it important to them to contribute to it.
Well, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, a lot of the things you said, we've always had in mind. We've had an energy program at Fort Gibson for over a decade now, and we've really had a really successful program in saving on energy cost, which was our initial goal. So we got to a point where we had a good return. We're saving about 40% our initial cost. But when I was approached by Clear Results on, hey, do you guys want to start an energy program? I wasn't that interested because I knew we were already there. But what interested me was the fact that we were going to go beyond just saving dollars. We were going to, involve the teachers, the administration, the community, the students, and there was going to be some opportunities to expand the program into more than just saving money. And that's what really interested me.
No, that's awesome. And, one thing that we noticed when we started recruiting to different schools around the area is that, we started out with just seniors, college bound. And then, going back and kind of reflecting, we realized, not everybody is maybe meant or wants to go down a college career path. Maybe it's just technical school or on the job training. So we kind of wanted to cast as wide of a net as possible. And working with George and Mike at Fort Gibson really helped us to kind of develop the curriculum, because I'm not an educator. I just knew that we wanted to help people. So the guys there were really instrumental as far as helping us, work out the day-to-day of what to do with our interns. And, I'll tell you, we set out to, like I said, involve all these different groups, and we had a lot of successes. One of the districts that we work with, that gave us a couple interns, you know, their median household income is about $14,000. And being able to have the students that no way could take an unpaid internship and give them a couple $100 a month was great, and give them that on-the-job experience. That was awesome. So Mike, the other co-champion there, hey Mike, he and George both worked with Dallas on a day-to-day basis. So as we go to the next slide, Mike, if you could kind of tell us what it was like having the extra support to help you guys go on, you know, to like complete more of your energy efficiency goals. There's Dallas there with a broken arm.
Well, our school requires that that seniors do an internship. We've implemented a few years ago. The good thing with Dallas was I was able to use him as my teacher's aide. So he was able to do a lot of the work that we wanted to do during that hour. So I did stuff with him on my plan period, I did stuff with him after school. George was here during my plan period, and we were able to, it was easier for us to implement what we wanted. We were able to use him as a facilitator for us to the rest of the school. So if I needed to talk to a principal or administrator in another building, I could send him if I needed to. Or if I needed, you know, information on, well, we end up having him doing a project for us. Well, once we figured out how we wanted to write it down, we were able to just send him on his way, and he was able to compile the information. And then in my class, he could sit there and he could put it in a format where I could understand it. And well, I mean, that way, because we had a whole bunch of information, and he made a nice spreadsheet for us that worked perfect for us.
That's awesome. You know, and without going too deep, I do want to touch on one thing, George, George, that you mentioned a while back, was the school to work type atmosphere that you guys do there in Fort Gibson, making sure that everybody is, you know, getting out of high school and getting into the workforce.
Well, one thing that we do, all seniors have to put together a portfolio, and one of the components in the portfolio is that they have to have contact with businesses in the community, and they have to do an actual interview with different managers and business people in our community before they can graduate. It has to be, it's a component of their portfolio for graduation. Another thing that we really encouraged was interning, and what we were able to do as Dallas is he was able to count that as a high school credit. Our high school librarian was able to do the paperwork, and it was actually counted as a 1 hour high school credit as well. So it counted as a class. So, you know, it's that idea of from school to work, that transition, and it's been our focus for several years, and I know it's been around the country as well. So we feel it's just really successful.
Before I could just
program with Dallas.
That's awesome. And, you know, I want to give Dallas an opportunity here, because the internship was literally just made for, you know, folks like Dallas and kids like Dallas. And this photo was taken at a school board meeting where we were doing a presentation on the district's energy consumption. So I want to give Dallas an opportunity to kind of, you know, tell us how the internship, you know, helped give some workforce experience if there was a leg up there, and B, with, you know, was there a added benefit to it being a paid internship as opposed to having to maybe work for free, essentially?
Yes, my dad actually got me into energy management because he works at PG&E, a power plant. So he's always shown me a little bit of interest in that, but this internship allowed me to see, instead of being at the power plant, maybe see like the more hands-on energy usage and functionality part of the job. And it really opened my eyes to like there's more than just, there's plenty of options for energy management jobs and stuff with that. But the paid part of the internship was very useful to me because it helped me start putting back some funds to maybe attend OSUIT over in Okmulgee, Oklahoma for trade school. and that coronavirus kind of put a hold on that, but it did help me. The paid internship was definitely a very good boost for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that was, like I said, even though like we didn't tick all of our boxes, we wanted to make sure that the program was helping people. And if I had one thing for us to learn and move forward from this is we had originally made the program geared towards seniors, and expanding it out, moving forward from, really freshman level to senior level, and recruiting more inner city schools, we think will help us, have a much wider, we'll have a much wider net to pull from. But ultimately, as long as we're helping students and the counselors are out there giving us good kids to work with, we'll work with anybody that's has any interest at all in STEM or energy efficiency. And so we were super happy to get Dallas, and a huge shout out to Mike and to George there at Fort Gibson. Before we move on to questions for the group, Mike, George, Dallas, are there any takeaways or things that you guys learned that you weren't expecting to get out of the internship program?
I didn't expect a lot of. It's a great program, but I didn't expect to see a lot of kids asking me about it. But I actually had a lot of students ask me how they could get onto that program. And when me and George were doing a rundown on one of the buildings here at the school, a kid actually came up to me and asked me what we were doing, and I said, "Oh, it's a energy management internship." And he asked how he could get into this class, and George actually told him he possibly could do it when he gets into high school. So that's something I didn't expect, is a great output from younger students.
This is great. So what we'll do for Q&A is what we'll do is that if you could please type in your question into the chat bar, and then we'll just kind of go down in order. We'll have a few minutes for questions here, but that way we can kind of keep it in order so that people aren't talking over each other. So we've seen a couple of questions come in already, and so we'll just start with, I think the most relevant one here is one coming from Alicia from SBW. The question is, can you elaborate on how many students have gone through the internship program, what kind of work they do, and what added benefits are provided to students?
We were basically piloting the program, so this is a start for us. So we've had one so far. And what we wanted to do then is kind of put together a type of curriculum that gave real hands-on experience. So we didn't have a textbook or anything like that. We did actual things that we as energy managers do that we included Dallas into. And so what we wanted to do is build on that too. We hope that we can continue this program, that OG&E will continue to fund it. And we look forward to using some of the things that we learned from our first experience and build upon that for future internships.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that we also check all the boxes for the school for it to count as credit, and for the state so that we can still, count it as an actual class. So we have to blend all those together.
Yeah, and I can tell you that on our side, our goal this year before COVID hit was to have 12 to 14 interns. We actually haven't launched yet, with school kind of lagging behind, and we're not really sure how everything is going to look. But I can tell you that we have partnered with a third party now to help us write curriculum, because what we were just doing, like Mike and George says, was showing them how to use kilowatt meters or helping us determine kWh consumption per classrooms. And when we would get monthly billing data from our modeling team, converting that into calculating the energy savings. So the first year it was a little bit rough. Fortunately, we had the energy champions there on site, and the utility, the way the program works for us is we wrote the addendum into our existing contract, and we have the funds, and essentially Dallas is a contract worker there for the school district. So we get invoiced and we pay the school district. So Dallas is not a Clear Result employee. He works there for Fort Gibson.
Great. So we got time for one more question. We'll go to Shelley Jensen from Idaho Power, who asked, can you elaborate on how the utility supported the internship? Patrick, I know you kind of already hit some
Yeah,
of that in
but
your response.
one thing to elaborate on is we have a really good relationship with OG&E here in Oklahoma. Mike and George, I don't know how many school board meetings Forrest and I have been to there to do check presentations or just to sit in and kind of back you guys up while you give your energy spiels about your quarterly savings. So when we pitched the program to them, they really never asked why we wanted to do this. We just, took to them that this was something that we felt needed to be done to help Oklahoma students. And when we tossed a number out there that it would take to implement the program, they worked with us to make sure that those funds are going to be spent for the students in Oklahoma. And that was really about the gist of it. And then making, because our goal, aside from saving energy, is to be good stewards of, ratepayer dollars. And I feel like we were able to accomplish that.
Nice. And then, yeah, from the team there, do you guys have anything else kind of final comments? I wish to say thank you so much for being here, but yeah, anything else you'd like to say to the group? We've got a lot of folks from across the U.S. and Canada that would love to hear any of the thoughts you guys have.
I would just like to say that we're very proud of our program here, and we would like to see it, go way beyond us. And I hope if this is something interesting to you, that you'll pursue it. There's so many good benefits to it, and I hope we brought out some of the benefits. If we had time, we'd tell you a whole lot more. But it's good for schools, it's good for the communities, it's good for kids, and it's not just about dollars. It's just a great program, and find ways to implement it in your businesses or in your schools. I think you'll really be glad that you do that.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. And so I should point out real quick, if you haven't familiarized yourself, everybody, with the Zoom group chat, there are some excellent comments going on with guidance from people. So there's, again, a lot of ways for you to interact with the conference. Just wanted to call that out. But thanks again. So now.
So one thing that I would just add to that, Patrick, just because you didn't mention it, so I'll mention it for you guys, is so the third party that they're working with is need.org. And in addition to supporting the internship, they also help, and Patrick, you're probably gonna have to correct me slightly on this, but I think you guys are working with teachers as well with curriculum development to actually get energy curriculum into the schools, right? Is that accurate?
Yep, that's 100% accurate. We host a couple workshops every single year where the teachers spend a whole day learning from a NEED instructor, doing classroom experiments. And then when they leave there, they're called the NEED kit, but it's a big, large box full of classroom experiments. And the curriculum goes from 3rd grade to high school seniors. So they're pretty neat little kits there.
Yeah, and the curriculum is developed specifically for Oklahoma, so it will meet the standards. And since Oklahoma is like one of the lowest funded school districts in the nation, it really just helps elevate everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd like to point that it also, all of the curriculum that they offer, they have, it's matched up for every state. They have all the Common Core curriculum standards that it checks the box on, as well as all the STEM standards that are unique to your state as well. And yes, in a kind of a perfect scenario, the curriculum leads to the clubs and the internship, and then that curriculum leads to the internships, and then Dallas was even going to come back in and mentor get into the curriculum and come in as a mentor to the younger kids as they come up, complete that circle. As he mentioned, they came up and asking him, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing? That looks cool." So.
Thanks, guys. So one of the things that we wanted to do is, and just let you guys know, is that this conversation isn't over. This is just the beginning of the conversation in DEI. How do we bring it into program design? How do you bring it into your organization? How do we start with workforce development? How do we learn from the amazing work that we're doing, but also learn from maybe some of the missteps that we've created? So right before we go to break, we're going to take a 10-minute break after this. We just want to know what your next steps are. And in that, also, if you have next steps for us, let us know what our next step should be for continuing this dialogue. We'd love to hear from you now, and then we'll take a break and come back at 11:25.
And by hear you now, we mean hear you in Mentimeter. So please go to your web browser on your phone or on your computer and go to menti.com, 8624856. That's at the top of the screen share right now. The question is, what do you feel is your next step around DEI?
A lot of brainstorming. Yeah. What can you do? There's so many options out there. Have conversations.
It can feel overwhelming, but taking any step is a good step.
Getting a school program. Yeah, if you don't already have an SEM cohort that involves schools. We have, in the Northwest, we have schools that are just integrated into our commercial SEM program, so it doesn't have to be school specific, but it could be.
Loving it.
Engage the C-suite. That's really important. Just like in SEM, you need executive sponsorship, you need it here too, right? So whether or not that's talking to your program administrator C-suite, your organization C-suite, or perhaps some of your participants C-suite. Yeah.
I just lost it, but it said get uncomfortable. And, you know, we talk about the DEI as a journey. One of the first things is realizing is really kind of, you start off thinking, oh yeah, we got this, we got DEI, we're good, or that's not a problem for us, or it doesn't really apply to our program. And it's like really kind of questioning all things and just saying, does it really, you know, and are you really good? And if you're not getting uncomfortable, you're probably not pushing yourself. And so there's a lot more to that. We'll plug for Brene Brown, BreneBrown.com.
I saw a couple too, like translation materials, doing translation materials, especially if you're in some areas that maybe are more Spanish speaking or Vietnamese. Knowing your audience is a really good point, or perhaps multilingual SEM. That's also a really forward-thinking idea. Yeah, this is great. All right.
We can leave the poll open for folks to respond to, Wendy, and then.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, great. All right, so we'll take a hot minute here. We're going to come back at 11:25 and get going. Phone. All right, so with that, I want to make sure we get back into the meeting space again. So we're moving from DEI. Again, conversation still occurring. That wasn't the only time we're going to have this conversation. We're exploring working groups, webinars, all that kind of good stuff. And we're moving to SEM, M&V. And I am really excited about this section because it's not only delivering some of the partial fruits of our labor, I guess, especially with the funded research, getting an update on that. But also we asked the different evaluators that are in our industry, in the SEM industry, to come together and give a presentation on SEM modeling in the time of COVID. So kind of sticking to this theme, better together, you know, DNGVL, Rouge, and Guidehouse came together. I think that was it. Came together and they put together this presentation for you, which I think is a really cool idea. So you have different evaluators evaluating different programs. They're all coming together to have this conversation. And so therefore, in theory, the industry will be more on the same page because of it. So to that end, I believe we have Andrew. Is that right? Yeah, Andrew doing Bernath with Rouge Energy, doing COVID impacts to SEM. So Andrew, we'll let you take it away. As soon as I can tell Chad to change slides.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Bernath. I'm a senior data scientist with Rouge Energy Analytics. Rouge is a 100% woman-owned DSM impact evaluation firm. We specialize in embedded evaluation of SEM and other performance-based programs. As mentioned, this was sort of a collaboration, also with Andrew Wood of DNVGL, Dustin Bailey of Guidehouse, and Holly Farah, also of Rouge Energy Analytics, the owner of the company. Next slide, please. So briefly, because I was planning to give lots of details and go into all sorts of technical stuff and hope that you brought pillows in case you got tired, but I suppose I'll speed it up a bit since we're shy on time. We're going to start with talking about the challenge and what we're up against, move into methodologies what we've been using, and maybe introduce why we need to change these, what we need to change. And on that note, we'll go into how do we rewrite the instructions for these tools that we have and actually use them in this, you know, unprecedented time where the world seems upside down in a lot of places. And then we'll just pull it all together and talk about what we think is a good path for moving forward here. Next slide, please. So first, when I'm tackling a new problem, my first inclination is to zoom out and go to the big picture. I like to go back to basics and think about just what is strategic energy management before we even look into the challenge that we're facing. So there are some recommendations for equipment upgrades that happen, but really at the heart of it, it's an education and behavioral coaching program. We go in, we tell people how to be more energy efficient, and we have check-ins and have somebody monitor that and keep mentoring throughout the program. We're going to use past behavior and billing data to make comparisons. That's the basis of how we're estimating savings. And the important thing about this program is it's a holistic program. We're looking at the meter level to consider energy usage of the whole facility that we're evaluating. Next slide. So here's our challenge. This thing called COVID-19 changed everything. And so the particular issue that we have here is that we're using, as I mentioned, holistic, this meter level data. And so when COVID happens, you know, if a business shuts down temporarily, it's going to look like suddenly they're getting these great savings because, you know, energy use has plummeted at that building. But we need to figure out how we can account for this. And sort of the key of this is in several different standardized guides, we use a non-routine event adjustment. So some important things to note is sectors may be impacted disproportionately. For instance, industrial sectors may not see as much of an impact from COVID, but the commercial sector, for sure, you can see big effects in a lot of places. Also, effects happen at both the business and individual facility levels. Okay, next slide. So our goal at this high level is to develop a defensible method to estimate savings that's attributed to SEM program activity. And in the ideal circumstances, the methods we've been using all along are fine. Specific to maybe COVID, we need some new alternatives, especially when we have a disruption in the baseline consumption period or a disruption after program implementation. So methodology, I'll just review quickly. I'm sure all of you are probably familiar with these. We have, as the primary kind of gold standard is the forecast methodology. You estimate baseline consumption, and then you compare that to post-period consumption. And this is the kind of key point, I think, here is that this methodology is just fine for estimating non-routine events that occur in the baseline. If we can go to the next slide, we have the pre-post methodology. This uses all available energy consumption from both pre and post, and we include an indicator to identify the post-implementation period. This is, if you were to interact that indicator with every other term in the model, you get exactly the same results as the forecast. So they're very interchangeable, with the big difference that if you have non-routine events that are occurring in the post period, the pre-post method is a way that we can estimate the impact of those events. The next slide. So now let's move into what are the ways that we can adapt these. So we have three methods that we discussed in our collaboration. The first one is short-term changes removed. This is usually used when we have a disruption that occurs for a set period of time and not a long period of time. So it's got to be relatively short, and we want to look for a scenario where after the disruption occurs, operation went back to normal. So everybody's out of the office for a few months, and then everybody comes back in and it's business as usual. second method is post-installation modeling. And in the post-installation modeling, this is where we would use that pre-post model. Kathleen, I see a question from you. I can maybe address that in the Q&A session if you just stay tuned. The post-installation is great when we have a period that's longer than a few measurement periods, that we can add an indicator variable in the model and pick that up. It's also good when the disruption occurs at random intervals. So if it's not a consistent period of X months, but a couple months here, a couple months there, but the same disruption. And we want to look for a strong impact on site usage. Finally, we had engineering adjustments or engineering model. This is typically used when we have disruptions affecting specific equipment or operations, and we have estimates available for what the impact of those particular equipments are. Okay, next slide. So in the short-term changes, what we're going to do is we remove the period that includes the disruption, and then we're going to re-annualize savings. So we've used the forecast, we have our baseline model. In the post-period, we're going to use the model with the data available, but remove those months out, and then do re-annualizing. An important thing to consider here is if your site has a lot of seasonality, you may need to be careful with this method because removing certain months may have a bigger effect on your results if you're re-annualizing. In the post-installation, I mentioned we use an indicator variable. If this is a large enough impact, you'll see that this indicator variable is statistically significant, and this allows us to isolate and estimate the effect from the non-routine event separately. In the engineering, we use engineering estimates, and we just directly remove the impact from our engineering estimates from the model results of savings. The thing to note there is this requires the good understanding of the equipment and operations, including estimates of impact. Okay, next slide. Things to consider, like I said, strong seasonality can be a problem with short-term changes removal. And then again, if this lasts longer, if the non-routine event lasts longer than a few observation periods, this method is really not appropriate. The post-installation, we need to have more than a few observations. And a difficulty of this is if the non-routine event occurs near the program implementation, it's going to be very difficult to separate those effects out. And so if it starts alongside program implementation, we may not be able to use this method. The third one, engineering model, we want to look for a large effect on usage. And then we're going to remove or if there's a large effect on usage, then removing engineering estimated impact can result in zero or even negative savings at times. So we don't really want to use the engineering model when there are large impacts. Next slide. So in conclusion, this is our proposed approach to how we would account for impacts. First, you want to understand what's driving site usage, and we want to go all the way down to the customer level because that's going to consider the sector, the business type, and the customer type all rolled together in how this site is affected by COVID-19. We want to assess the risks of energy usage. How do we think that COVID-19 affected energy usage at this site? And then identify the appropriate methods from the ones that we've listed previously that we can use to account for COVID-19's impact on energy usage. And again, we're looking at things like, did the disruption occur in the pre-period, in the post-period? How big was the effect? When did the effect occur, and how long did it last? Then we isolate the identified impacts and ensure that the savings align with the SEM savings that we estimate at the end of the day is aligning with activities that are occurring at the site. And then just a note, we want to encourage everybody that the implementation, evaluation, site energy management team to engage with each other and work together as early as possible. That's going to really help everybody band together and figure this out and really find out how to solve this problem. And with that, we have, we invite you to reach out to any of us. We love to get technical with you. So if you have technical questions, please email us and we will be happy to continue the discussion. We'll send these slides out. There's a bit more technical information that's available in the appendix that we included, as well as those couple methodology slides I glossed over, which you can read through a little more critically and again, get back to us afterwards.
Thanks, Andrew.
With that, thanks everybody for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. There are some really good conversations in the chat. Kathleen, your question seems to be adequately answered through some follow-up chat discussions. One question that has come up, Andrew, that I think would be right for the larger group was just how does this relate to properties such as commercial properties where going back to normal is really not going to happen, like schools, college campuses, commercial properties. Can we apply the same methodology, or have you thought of other methodologies to apply here?
I think we're still considering what other methodologies can be used in those cases. I think, in my personal opinion, I think pre-post can generally capture a lot of those if we can include an indicator. If we think there's going to be a lasting effect, I think the only thing I would be concerned about there is I would imagine the effect probably changes over time, right? So right at the beginning of all of this, we're going to see a real strong reaction to shutdowns, to COVID and the pandemic. But over time, as people trickle back into the office, the effects might not be as strong. So it would be interesting to test these indicator variables and look at the significance of them in a longer term model and how sites respond to this.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Other comments coming in through the chat for those not watching it is Todd Edmondson with BPA, been around for a long time, is running, I think he runs the MNV group for the Northwest SEM Collaborative, and they're looking into this exact discussion. So lots of good discussion here. I really appreciate you, Andrew, getting our feet wet into really understanding on how we're going to come out of COVID. So thank you very much for your presentation. Like Andrew said, there was much more information available in his deck as an appendix that would have put everyone to sleep, most definitely, but we'll be there for your reference later on. So thank you, Andrew, for that. Appreciate it.
There's also
Thanks for your time.
Yep, there's also additional questions coming in, Andrew, just so you know, on the chat that maybe you can answer via chat just in the interest of time. And if one of the things that I talked to Holly about briefly is if there's interest in continuing this conversation with the evaluators or just in general with the SEM community, feel free to reach out to me or another member of the leadership team, and we can start figuring out whether or not a working group would be a good idea. I know that different individual programs have either already decided on a methodology or perhaps researched ideas around it. So it might be worth sharing those depending on what's happening. But if there is interest, we can definitely provide a platform for that as the North American SEM Collaborative. Great. Or perhaps connect people to something that's already going on. All right, next presentation we have is the funded research by Peter Thurkelson, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend. No pressure. Peter.
Oh, we must be like a third to halfway through what's like an awesomely engaging conversation, because everyone's now using the phrase "in the interest of time." And I too am going to say, in the interest of time, we're going to kind of clip through this. But first, hello, welcome, thank you virtually. I wish we were all together in beautiful Sillamar, but unfortunately, I'm in a small room with a mini split. See, efficiency. Thank you for the opportunity to let you know about our ongoing research looking at STEM cost effectiveness assistance. Is it Chad? Come on, Chad. We're in sync here. Next slide, buddy. There we go. All right. Before we get started, I want to introduce the other members of the research team because this is a strong team effort from Berkeley Lab and ACEEE. And throughout this presentation, you're going to hear not just from me, thankfully, but from the other team members as well. First, Heidi Fuchs is an expert in energy resources and social science with extensive background from appliance standard development and studying the water energy nexus. Bill Miller at LBNL is an economist who taught at UCSB for a few decades, plus or minus two, led efficiency programs at PG&E before we were fortunate enough to get him over to Berkeley Lab. He's a senior delegate for the International Standards Organization committee focused on energy management. I'm Peter Thurkelson, mechanical engineer by soul and training, and after much toiling in the combustion laboratory, decided that if I wanted to personally see an impact on this planet, I'd better get out of the laboratory and start working on the biggest challenge and hope for our collective future, which is people, which has gotten me to the SEM space. And then from ACEEE, Andrew Whitlock, who is serving both as manager of this whole presentation, as well as a researcher on our team, a research analyst focused on energy management and industrial decarbonization. Prior to ACEEE, he worked with the US DOE on their couple annual reports, including the annual electric power report. And then last, but certainly not least, is Ed Ryder, the master in charge of herding all of us semi-feral cats who have strong opinions. Ed is the new director of the industrial program at ACEEE, coming to ACEEE after a 30-year career at Dow Chemical as the director of strategic projects in their environmental technology center. So you'll hear from a number of us today. As the title says, this is funded research, which gives us the extreme luxury of spending a lot of time and resources and brain power on the topic that the North America SIM Collaborative Leadership Team has presented to us and charged us with. Funding for this project is coming for the LBNL staff from the Department of Energy and for the ACEEE staff from various private donors. So thank you to them. And thank you to the leadership team as a whole for their input on this project and direction of this project, and specifically our advisors, John Nickel, Brian Albert, and Peter Bassett. So we kicked this off in early January. We had a beautiful scope of work and plan, and we hit smack dab into COVID like everyone else. We've been adapting, and we also want to thank anyone who has spoken with us through interviews or other input. Your insights are what making this research possible. So the research purpose. The leadership team is directing this research, and I said we're conducting it on behalf of them. And so they have established a clear purpose of this research. We're looking for the output of our work to accelerate SEM adoption, improve impact stations, inform stakeholders, and answer fundamental questions raised by the SEM community. We periodically return to these 4 points to ensure the work we're doing will bring value to you, the North America SIM Collaborative members. Insert bird noise here. There we go. Cost effectiveness persistence. This is our first charge from the leadership team to focus on. This idea came from you guys, as Wendy mentioned early on, from the previous summit was a key point of interest and consideration. And we're taking two main data sources for our input. One is published literature, mostly evaluation reports, which Andrew has been taking the charge on scraping together and diving into, and then interviews with program administrators about the details within their programs. And we're looking for these primary data sources to shed light on common terminology and potential linkages between program design structures and their effectiveness around the concepts of cost effectiveness and persistence. Step one, information gathering. We're not imposing any limitations on what is or isn't an SEM program. We just don't have the political will or enough beer to get through those conversations as a team. And so at this stage, we're saying more the merrier. If you say you're an SEM program or something similar like CEI, Continual Energy Improvement, have that. We'd love to talk to you. I mentioned Andrew has been taking the lead, the valiant lead on collecting evaluation and other reports and finding that they can be, well, sporadically released, sometimes in process, especially for younger programs, and sometimes woven together with evaluation of a portfolio of programs, making distinction of SEM evaluation difficult. We definitely got the message of, let's make this interactive. So we're making it interactive. People, get your phones, your whatever's out. And Chad, you want to run your magic? Because I sure don't know a thing about Mentimeter administration.
Yep. So if you can see on the screen share, we got the poll. A few folks have already started on it, which is great. The question, or sorry, if you're just now new to this, go to menti.com from your web browser on your phone or on your computer and go to menti.com, type in 8624856 and respond to this very simple question. Are cost effectiveness and energy savings persistence a function of the maturity of energy management business practices fostered by an SEM program? Peter, is there anything else you'd like to add to that question to describe it?
If I have to add something, I want you to answer the second response. What? Now that I didn't have to talk for 5 seconds, I did notice that something's going on over chat. As Heidi can attest, I am incapable of presenting and looking at chat at the same time. So if you have something you want to ask through chat, go ahead, and I'm hoping that someone else on our team will flag it out for later.
That's what the hall monitor is for, Greg. He's on it.
Thank goodness, because I don't have my hall pass. Thank you for your input on this question. Don't feel bound by it. This is a incredibly first, very non-scientific point of inquiry on something we've been kind of noodling and wringing our hands around on inside. It's not something we're trying to dead-on answer today, but it's something we kind of have been getting pinged on by people we talk to and as I mentioned, what we've been talking about internally. But we'd like to give you a little bit of a teaser about what we're finding to date. We don't want to contradict ourselves when we're done with our report, so we're kind of wanting to present some findings we've been encountering along the way. And Chad, if we flip back over to the presentation, let Andrew jump right in.
Great, thanks. So yeah, so as Peter mentioned, we spent a good amount of time slogging through the deep reaches of the internet, trying to find as many program materials as we could find, evaluations, descriptions, you name it. So after pulling all those things together, we developed a course filter that consisted of a number of high-level questions that related to program design, savings methodology, savings persistence, energy management system persistence, and cost effectiveness to get a rough idea of what the landscape looks like across North America. So after using this filter to go through a number of these reports, we're able to establish a few anecdotal takeaways. Take these with a grain of salt. And that was, persistence was seldom discussed in evaluation reports. When it was, the focus was often on the persistence of energy savings, although a few evaluations did focus in on the persistence of energy management systems. In regard to energy savings persistence measure life, we sort of saw a span of between 1 and 10 years across different programs. In relation to cost effectiveness, there's a whole bunch of different tests that that are used to evaluate this, and there wasn't one or another that really stood out, but just that public utilities commissions, Department of Environmental Quality, and similar agencies were really the ones in charge of establishing what that test was going to be.
Because I wasn't talking, I was able to watch the chat. What were the methods determined what were the methods used to determine EUL? That is a huge question of our research. We don't want to give you a preliminary answer on that one because it's, as you'll hear in upcoming slide, diverse. Interview topics. As I mentioned, our primary data sources are the literature search of evaluations that we're looking at, as well as talking with program administrators of different SEM programs across the region. And we use the literature search as well as early conversations to frame out about a 90-minute interview. So this is extensive, and we're focusing on the overall design of programs, energy savings, the methods, as well as the persistence, cost effectiveness, the test type authority and what's projected or achieved, and then management practices, which again kind of relates back to our Menti question earlier on. Oh, not in presentation mode. Now I got the ugly box on the side. Full credit to ACEEE's graphics department and Andrew's leadership on the graphic. These are the programs that we've identified to have conversations with. The ones in green are ones we've already talked to, about 8, and we're targeting about 30 programs in all today, but we have a strong suspicion we have not identified every SEM CEI program out there. And if you want to participate, if you want to lend your voice, please email me. I've got my email there, or quite frankly, anyone on the research team, if you get a hold of their email, we would love to add you to our roster and sign you up to chat about your program on this topic, cost effectiveness and persistence. It's a great spread across the region. And again, looking to add more if possible. One point that we found is that during some of these conversations on interviews, we didn't know about the program offerings. And some of the programs we talked to actually have multiple SEM programs that are being offered. Sometimes it's industrial, commercial, and we would love to hear from both independently. We've been splitting out those programs when we encounter them, and it really adds a lot of nuance to the research.
So I think this is my slide, and
Get it, Bill.
yeah, and so I want to, I'm looking at this and trying to give some highlights for this in the minute we figured this would take. I think the thing of the 8 interviews that we've done, I think the thing is to basically say that from a distance, SEM looks like a forest, but when the closer you get, the more diversity you see, and we started off thinking we are going to go for 30 or more interviews. We're really going to get close to a census of what's going on out there, so we have a real picture of the entire landscape, and that's when the diversity starts to come up. So, for example, on program design, we're seeing some organizations that basically outsource their SEM program. Others pretty much do it themselves. We see various kinds of support in terms of the participant. And in one case, the participant actually pays for access to the SEM program offering. And lots of details in the middle there about what costs are covered, how they're covered, is the energy manager covered. As I say, we haven't hit 2 that are alike. Everyone, in terms of the energy management framework, everyone points to some kind of relationship back to the kind of exemplars that we hear about, the CEE SEM minimum energy standards, 50,001 ready. One program was sort of looking at DOE's SEP program. Some look at 50,001 itself. So they all look at those antecedents, but still then you get lots of diversity in terms of the actual program elements. Somebody asked, and then about EUL. Somebody asked about EULs. I'll say this, it seems to depend on the program's goals and designs. Some programs are just focused on practices and behaviors. Others are more comprehensive. Which is a way of saying that some are treating the whole site, including capital improvements, and others break those out, and then they have to break out their EUL accordingly and do kind of a mix of where the capital's, what's the EUL of the capital and where it's reported, and conversely, where are the behavioral items reported and what is used to determine the EULs there. I think the jurisdiction in which the program's being deployed sets a context for how those EULs are determined. The question of the persistence of participants' energy management activities is something everybody's responds positive to, but nobody has much data. In some locations, there's some records of that. In other locations, they're just interested in in how that, it's a future project for them. And we're seeing on cost effectiveness, we're generally seeing a clustering around a TRC approach and a determination of those inputs that's similar to the way other program inputs are determined. So, it's sort of like, okay, it's TRC, but still there's some unease about, what's really going on, and is there some concern here, and we're hoping to be able to surface what that issue really is. So, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Bill. In terms of next steps, we've done almost 1/3 out of around 30 interviews and have 4 more scheduled. We hope to wrap these up in the next month, so we'd be really happy to hear from you all regarding any programs we've missed. As addressed, please email Peter with his contacts. We are also working on putting together a glossary of terms. We've discovered several different definitions for various terms commonly used in SEM. So this is an effort to pull those together in service of coming up with a common vocabulary. Next, we're using a qualitative data analysis software called In Vivo, and that allows for the analysis of large amounts of text data. You can use it on any type of text. So we're using it to analyze the reports that Andrew spoke about, as well as the transcripts of the interviews that we've been conducting. This kind of software makes it easier to see patterns among different chunks of text and draw connections that you might not see as a human. Just looking at it individually, it can really analyze the whole body. There are various types of queries and automated analysis that you can perform once you've organized the data appropriately, which takes some time. For example, are particular words typically mentioned in context with other concepts? And using the software is itself a research project, sort of within this larger research project, so it's exploratory in nature. That said, we do hope to uncover some patterns and insights that we wouldn't otherwise find without it. And finally, we plan to have our research deliverables published at the end of the year. Next slide, please.
And returning to that, in the interest of time, Chad, we're going to ignore this last Menti question to save ourselves for other presentations. I did see in the chat 2 things I wanted to highlight. Faith from SVW mentioned their work with NIA, compiling a lot of evaluation reports in the Northwest region, which was an enormous stepping off point for our own kind of extension beyond that region. And it's a great resource to take a look at. And then Walt from EPA mentioning energy programs that falling apart. And it's one of those kind of things that was leading towards our early Menti question and trying to understand the relationship between the business practices of energy management and the persistence of those savings. It's something that I don't know that we'll fully uncover this year, but it's something that we would love to kind of keep poking at and move forward on and looking for ways to frame that. So with those kind of 2 highlighted, there were other great comments in the chat, but thank you all for our time. And we wanted to leave you with a few good questions because we are researchers and are always looking for job security. So more questions, the better. How would research be useful to additional audiences? Who else should we be talking to? What are we not asking that we should be? And what research areas would be good next steps? And feel free to email myself again, the email's there at the bottom of the screen, the leadership team members or anyone else on the research team. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, there's actually a pretty good question here from Richard Hart, which is, what exactly are the deliverables? I hope I captured your question, Richard.
What are we doing here? Oh, that did fit into our second Menti question, so thank you, Richard. We are very conscious that a PDF report that sits collecting e-dust on some web server is a waste of time and money. We are conducting this research. We have probably a default position of some type of report come at the end of the year, but honestly, we hate that idea. We would love to hear how this information should be distributed, how it should be presented, and to whom it needs to get in front of to actually have a meaningful impact. And again, that could be for this year, as Heidi mentioned, we're looking at the end of the calendar year for something. Beyond that, like what kind of a multi-year rollout might look like and how to build on that. yeah, it's something we didn't want to set ourselves in stone on. We definitely have report at the end of the year, but we would love to amend that. We would love to make it more dynamic. We would love to make it more useful to yourselves as the collaborative members and those that are not in the collaborative but really do need to understand these things more deeply.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you, Peter. I think that I immediately went to report, but you're right. What purpose does that serve? Let's figure out a way to make this useful for the community. What can we do for you guys when we finally get the answers to these questions? How can we present them? All right, so the third and final in the trifecta on M&V is negative savings. So over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, I would say, maybe even longer than that now, there's been a negative savings group, a working group, just coming together to talk about recommendations for how negative savings should be dealt with. The group consisted of quite a few people, and Dustin Bailey from Guidehouse is going to present and give an overview on their findings and recommendations. So Dustin, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide, please. So what we're talking about, so here's everyone that's involved. Next slide, please. So what do we talk about negative savings? Well, with the SEM program, often when we do these models are whole building models, which means that the whole building models will show any changes occurring at the site. These changes could either be due to SEM activities or they could be due to other type changes that occur at the site. We'll discuss those in detail. Because this is a whole building model and because of how the way SEM Savings calculates its savings, what can happen is you can get what we would call negative savings. You can look at what you were doing before, you could look at what you're doing after, and you're saying, we're using more energy now than we did before the SEM program was involved. And so the question is, how do you handle that? Do you say, well, the SEM program is making the site use more energy, which is probably unlikely, but we need to come up with an idea of how we handle that issue. And so we interviewed a bunch of program administrators and implementers to understand how they were handling it. Right now, it's kind of split 50-50. As you can see in this chart below, about 60% of the sites are making negative savings 0. And then the other 40 kind of split in how they do it. Some of them claim it at the site level. Some of them don't claim it at the site level, but instead claim it at the program level so that the pluses and minuses kind of balance out. And there's basically different ways to handle that. We'll kind of talk about that as we go through here. One highlight from this is that measure life 1 to 10 years, but we just talked about that. Well, anyway, but I thought that was also very interesting because I feel that it strongly interrelates with this issue of negative savings. Let's go to the next slide, please. So basically, there are lots of different ways that negative savings can occur, but I will kind of show you these 3 examples and then we'll go into further detail here. Basically, in all 3 of these examples, you are having, 2 of the 3 examples are having non-SEM activities affect their energy use. So in this first one, what's happening is that a site actually has capital projects or equipment changes or something that's unrelated to the SEM program that's causing the site to use more energy. And again, we'll go through each of these in detail. The second one here, they're actually having an operational change. So again, if you have a model that's based on this is the energy use based on how you're operating in the past, and then you add a Saturday to your operation in the post condition, now the models don't align anymore because now you're comparing 5 days to 6 days and everything gets all mismatched. And that can cause the sites to either go up or down and misestimate savings. And then the last one here, if you can see behind your chat box where I'm just seeing a bunch of pictures, the last one here is sites that don't engage. Sites that go in the SEM program, they're all, they don't buy in, I guess, and basically it doesn't change. So let's go to the next slide and we'll go through these things in detail. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing interactions of non-SEM activities, and in this case, it was a capital project that was installed, so a project outside of the SEM program. What we want to avoid here is double counting. We don't want to have a program rebate a measure through a utility program and then also get that savings through the SEM program. And so typically what they do is if a measure is done outside the SEM program, they just take the savings, the ex-ante savings, out of the SEM program and directly account for it. The issue, of course, is that if you're an evaluator, you know that ex-ante savings is questionably accurate. And so if the ex-ante savings is too high or too low, the SEM program will show that by either going up or going down. And also some of these ex-ante measures, or some of these non-SEM measures might not persist. You know, they might go for a while and then go away. And if the SEM program is just taking out that ex-ante savings, suddenly it can turn positive and negative because that program is not still going. And so I think what's important to note here is the SEM program can be basically used as a commissioning tool. So if a non-SEM measure is being installed, the SEM model usually can clearly show the impact of that measure. And it's really useful for the SEM team to communicate with those other programs and say, hey, you guys are claiming this and we're seeing this. And I've seen examples where the SEM program is actually basically commissioned projects where they said, hey, we're not really seeing this. And they went, oh yeah, we didn't commission that VFD, and they went in and they fixed it, and then the SEM program aligned. So there's some opportunity there of communication between the SEM program and non-SEM programs so that these non-SEM activities are properly accounted for. So let's go to the next slide. So another common thing that can happen at a site that can cause this negative savings is change in operation. And so this can be anything from adding weekends to your operation to, if this is an industrial site, you could have a complete change in the product you're making. So I had a site that was doing peanut butter and they went from doing mostly crunchy to mostly smooth. I know that sounds silly, but it increased their energy use pretty significantly. And so you can have that where if you change your operation in any way, if it's not reflective to how you were operating in the past, it can cause that model to change dramatically. And so in this case, everything was going fine, and then they had a production change, and the model sank. This isn't due to SEM, this is just due to a change in operation at the site. So let's go to the last slide here, or sorry, the next one here. So in this case, this is a site that didn't engage. We see this not often, but sometimes you have a site that gets in the SEM program, they do the training, and they're like, we're doing everything. You guys, none of this is helpful to us for one reason or another. And basically we can see the baseline period and the measurement period don't look that much different. There's ups and there's downs, and basically they didn't implement any measures at their site, and so they just kind of bounced around, and it ended up being negative savings in this case, but really it's zero savings because we didn't engage in the site. And let's go to the next slide, please. So what's the recommendation of our group? Well, first of all, you have to try to account for any outside externalities, any outside activities before you start trying to say what the savings is, right? So if you have a capital project, if you have any of these things that we discussed, you want to try to account for those things as much as you can. Not only to avoid zero or negative energy savings, but also to make sure that your SEM model is as accurate as possible. Within the first year, if you are seeing negative savings, once you account for those things, we feel that you should claim zero savings. And the reason is that we don't feel that being involved in the SEM program is going to cause you to use more energy. It may cause you may not engage, or there may be a change at the site, but the SEM program in and of itself shouldn't normally cause you to use more energy. Now, there is very small exceptions where they've done a program change or control change and it might have caused a short-term issue, but typically then the SEM model will catch it and say, hey, you did that control change, let's reverse it. So anyway, there's this opportunity for continuous commissioning, but typically if it's in year one, we would claim it as zero. If it's in year two, and you're claiming savings in year one and year two, savings should always be incremental. And this really comes down to that effective useful life kind of issue. But if your effective useful life is anything more than 1 year, if you got 100,000 kWh in year one, you need to have incremental savings in year 2. So if you get 100,000 in year 1, you get 80,000 in year 2, it should be -20. And the reason it's -20 is that the stuff that you did in year 1 is not persisting into year 2. And so if it's year 1, claim it as 0. If it's year 2, always claim incremental savings. Now, of course, if you have a huge change in the site and it ends up being like 100 in year 1 and -20 in year 2, again, that's probably not due to SEM. But as much as possible, future year savings should always be incremental. So even if it's positive, you have 100 in year 1 and 150 in year 2, you should claim 50 because it should always be incremental. And then lastly, just like we discussed in the last group, is that persistence and this issue of negative savings is closely interrelated. I feel that we should really dig in further into this persistence issue and try to understand, what is a reasonable persistence of these programs. Is that answer that question heavily affects how you should claim negative savings. If you only have a 1-year persistence, that's a lot different than having a 5-year persistence and how you handle that savings. Because do you expect the savings to last year over year, or do you expect that savings to be here and be gone? Kind of question. So that's it. I think there's, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Dustin. Appreciate that. So we're going to run into a Mentimeter question real quick, just to kind of get a pulse on what impact that presentation made on, your thoughts and your understanding. And I wanted to take this opportunity. Dustin was rushing to move through it. I wanted to give everyone else a due process that were on the team. Others on the team were Ann Joyner from Stillwater, Zach Podell Earnhardt from Cascade Energy, Maggie Buffin from Cadmus, Jennifer Huckett from Cadmus, and Dustin Snyder from Lighthouse, and Alexander Dodd from Lighthouse. So they all played a role in the discussion. I just wanted to give them their chance.
Sam Day.
Oh yeah, and Sam Day too. I apologize, Sam. See, I almost forgot to. But
so sorry, I was moving so quick, but I was told they were supposed to keep it.
That's okay.
Also, Dustin, I think everybody, especially me, is really upset I can no longer have creamy peanut butter. I'm just saying that really this summit now has really just gone drastically downhill.
Well, I was doing an SEM program for a Hershey plant. I can tell you which of the Hershey candies is more energy intense. So.
Oh, I don't actually like chocolate, so
I don't want to know.
Saving energy already.
Yeah, I don't want to mess up my enjoyment of.
Yeah, don't tell me, please.
We got some interesting results coming in. I think Dustin, nice work, and to the team, nice work. And Greg, this is really great. I'm just seeing. I was really impressed, Dustin, how you kind of brought it all together. But it looks like I'm not alone in that assessment. 32 responses. I think things are clearer now, which is pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, and if there's any further questions, please feel free to contact me or any of the other members of this team. I'd love to discuss the things. We're all SEM nerds, so.
Yeah, I think this also provides a really interesting lens for the funded research paper that we're looking at, right, from a persistence standpoint around negative savings. What does that mean? What are the implications of that? So that's a really good thing to bring up, and something we can probably, I don't know, take a look at or talk about.
Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting about that is that a lot of these sites participate year after year. So when you talk about effective useful life, it can be really super confusing. It's like how to get an effective useful life of a lighting program when you replace it every 9 months, right? So it's kind of anyway, it's kind of a difficult question.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dustin. Appreciate that. All right. Well, we did a great job of getting almost back on track. I think the beginning of this summit was so fascinating. We ended up getting somewhat far behind, but we're back close to where we should be. So we're going to take a 10-minute break here again, and you can see that there is a little survey link in the "We want your feedback." We do want your feedback on how this is going. We have one more section, and then we'll be wrapping up. And so Andrew is going to put the link to the survey in the chat. We'll also remind you at the end, and then also send an email to you. As we know, once you leave the room, you're probably not filling out the survey. So although we'll send it via email, we'd appreciate it before you leave so that we can understand both what you enjoyed, what we can improve on. And in the meantime, we'll see you back here at 12:28. Woohoo! I don't know if everybody's noticed, but me and Greg and Debbie, we have our SEM, North American SEM shirts on, which are given to us courtesy of Greg Baker last year at the North American SEM Summit. Chad claims that he forgot his. We think maybe he left it intentionally.
I find that I forget it very often.
Walt wasn't wearing his either. That's all right. We'll forgive him. All right. So we are excited to jump into the next phase, kind of the last section of our summit. Hopefully so far it's gone pretty well. And kind of like one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning of the summit was that, you know, some of the feedback that we heard from you guys from the last summit was the information that you received in the presentation by the participant that we had last year was really informative and very good, and you guys got to ask them questions and get feedback and stuff like that. And so we wanted to honor that, and given the virtual environment, we also wanted to honor the fact that we actually could get people from around the country, or in this specific case, the Northwest. And then the other thing that we wanted to make sure we do was highlighted commercial / small to medium businesses, both because this is the ACEEE summer study for buildings, but also because small to medium businesses, as we start thinking about kind of equitable distribution of SEM, how are we starting to incorporate those organizations that wouldn't normally perhaps have the opportunity, or perhaps haven't necessarily had that large energy impact that a lot of people have on the industrial side. So our two participants, I'm saving it. I mentioned them earlier, but I'm not going to mention them until we get done with our kind of homework, if you will, which is, Chad, do you want to go to the next slide? Oh, caca.
1 second.
Yeah.
And just while Chad's fumbling through this, just a reminder that link for the survey is in the chat. Just if everyone could please fill that out before they break off for the day. Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the things that I realized when I was combing around North America for commercial SEM participants is that there's not as many as I had thought there would be. And so I think this is a really good time to start talking about what are the barriers either you have or perhaps the program administrator that you're working with has, or on an evaluation side, kind of what have you seen when it comes to trying to engage with commercial and small to medium businesses. And if you do incorporate commercial, small to medium businesses in your SEM programs, what are some of the reoccurring barriers that you're seeing and the struggles that you're seeing from those participants? You know, maybe it's lack of resources, maybe it's not being able to have the technical savviness that you need to implement the program. But so we are gonna put you into breakout rooms. This question will go in the chat just like before, just like Andrew put it in right now. And this time you're gonna end up in different breakout rooms. So spend some time also getting to know each other, and we'll come back here in about 10 minutes to kind of talk through some of those barriers. All right, see you guys in 10.
Okay, we're all old pros at this now, so away we go.
It's fun to watch people come back at different speeds because I get to see people I haven't seen yet.
I tell you,
it reshuffles my screen.
I wasn't a fan of breakout rooms before today, but today has been really quite pleasant. It's been
I love it. Every time we come back, I think the smile on Greg's face gets bigger and bigger.
It's been
Greg,
great.
my only comment would be we should have made them a little bit longer.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Something tells me Greg has avoided speed dating.
Don't tell his wife.
Right. Yes, please.
Oh, all right.
Should we go to the Mentimeter?
Yeah, let's do it. So kind of our question really is just what barriers did you guys come up with around why you have not implemented a commercial SEM program and or a small to medium business, included those participants in your program, or you know, why, what barriers do they have that you've witnessed more or less across the board? Cost effectiveness, cost, all right, seeing this as a theme. Data and accessibility, that one's really interesting. Yeah, they really rely on other people for that type of stuff. Yeah, I love it. Our 2 participants that are going to be talking here are probably just eating this stuff up. Engagement takes money. That's right. The white gloved approach that was originally designed for those large industrial customers, we're starting to look at for those small to medium businesses in the commercial, and what does that mean for the way that you're managing the program? Yeah. Variation in needs. Yep, that's very true. Small to medium businesses, commercial customers definitely need something different than industrial customers. Sure. Recruitment challenges. Yeah, how do you get them to commit and take the time? Absolutely. Dedicated staff. Yeah, kind of seeing some things. Just less energy usage, right? Sometimes not as complicated, although I think one of the things we're going to see with one of our participants coming up here is that I think you would normally assume that maybe their structure is simplistic, but then you realize that they actually, it's a structure that is really prone to SEM, and they've done amazing things with it. Do we see anything else, Chad, in here? Lack of staffing, monetary resources. Yeah, Businesses is short-term focused, not horizon focused. Yeah, I think that's really important. Sometimes they're just like, I'm, you know, literally just trying to make my paycheck, right? Or be able to pay the bills. Yeah. All right. Yeah, when you are a hammer, everything is a nail, right? Is SEM good for all businesses? That's a great question. And I think that answers probably not all businesses, but how we really identified all the businesses that it's good for. So to that end, Chad, let's go back to our next slides here. So the 2 businesses that we are going to be talking to today, a little bit in a panel format, are Goodwill Industries of the Columbia Willamette and the city of Tacoma. So the way that we're going to do this is a little bit of a panel type session. I'm going to have Goodwill just kind of talk to their slide and introduce themselves, give a little history on them in the program, and then we'll switch to city of Tacoma. And what I'm going to be doing is I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask them, but Greg's going to be monitoring the chat box. And so if you have questions for them, this is supposed to be an interactive session where we can ask participants these questions. And one of the reasons that we really thought Goodwill would be a good participant is, one, it's retail. So it's not normally done from an SEM. It's considered small, but what we're going to find out is that Goodwill's actually not small. And then also, you know, city of Tacoma, right? The complexities of your municipality actually make it ripe for SEM, and the ability to affect change, I think, also make it really ripe for SEM. And so if you haven't considered these 2 models or kind of considering them outside of the box, that'd be great. So Masha, do you want to introduce yourself and Goodwill? Really excited for you to join us. And just so you guys know, Masha and Terry have actually been on the entire SEM Summit because they were that interested in what we were talking about. So Masha.
Hey everyone.
You're on.
Hello everyone, my name is Masha and I'm the project manager of Goodwill Industries of Columbia and Willamette. We are one of the around 163 different Goodwills that we have in North America. And our business go back to 1927 when we started with only 5 employees. And by the end of 2019, we have 3,000 employees and 53 retail locations. Of course, other buildings, educational buildings separated from them. And we've been working with SEM since, so we said 2015, but if you look at the date on the signatures, it's December 2015. So it's kind of like 2016. Of course, I joined the team by 2017. So I've been working with SEM for the past years. And at 2016, when we started, we only have 9 buildings in the program. And right now we have like 53 buildings in the program. So 53 models, trackings, and seeing what's going on. Of course, these are the ones that SEM covers. We have buildings that are with providers that are not like PGE or Northwest Natural. So, and then we also have buildings in Washington State that are not in this program right now. So our goal is to be able to do the SEM for all of our buildings. Wendy asked me to also cover that what is our goal for now for the SEM. Our goal is that kind of we are coming to understanding that it doesn't matter how much we upgrade our facilities and how much we work and put capital projects in them, as long as we don't have everyone on board and as long as we cannot have a culture of being energy sensitive, we are not going to successful. So for the past 2 years, our mainly focus is on our employees and establishing that culture in our buildings. Wendy, I can't hear you.
Thank you. Yes, Perry Springs, City of Tacoma, your turn.
All right, thank you very much, Wendy. It's great to be with you all. So I just wanted to start off by saying that we have a mission at the City of Tacoma. Our employees care about our city, and we strive to serve our citizens by utilizing Tacoma's guiding principles of integrity, service, excellence, equity in all we do. I mentioned that because equity is one of our 5 principles, and I was very delighted that we had such a focus on it today. So for those of you from around the country, we're just south of Seattle, so sometimes we're the SeaTac is our common airport, so you may know us that way. We're the 4th largest city in the state, a little over 3,500 employees, of which 1,700 are part of our Tacoma Public Utilities, and that's significant. The programs we're going to talk about are both sponsored by Tacoma Power, which is a utility that serves quite a bit of the county as well as all the city residents. Within my responsibilities as the Resource Conservation Manager is 113 buildings. And that represents 2.7 million square feet of floor area. We're an older city for the West Coast, so a lot of our facilities are over 50 years old and beyond. We have, last year, our total energy, you can see that, 211,000 MBTUs, for those of you who recognize that number. And so we have 2 programs that we've worked with. We've been with the Industrial CSEM, which is known as HPEM. It's a program that Tacoma Power launched in 2014. And we have a central treatment plant, which is our largest industrial facility that the city operates. We focus on electricity, and it has a small natural gas component, but I'm excited to announce that we are getting much closer to producing our own renewable power. We have an agreement with Puget Sound Energy to sell that power through the RINs. So that facility is an exciting facility to be part of because both accomplishes a lot of savings and we're involved in generating renewable energy. In our commercial strategic program, the Tacoma Power was tasked with starting a CSEM program as part of our environmental action plan, which was written in 2015 and started in 2016. So they began that program in essentially the fall of 2018 and reached out to both private and public sector organizations, and we ended up with an all governmental cohort in the initial go around for the first 2 years. So we were asked to look at campuses or facilities that were over 1 million kilowatt hours per year. And so these 2 campuses were the best candidates for our portfolio, our convention center and the police fleet campus, which has a large maintenance facility associated with the police and other vehicles. Next slide.
And actually, can you hear me, Perry? I think if it's okay, Perry has some wonderful slides, and we can include these in the proceedings for everybody to check out. But I think there's some questions that Wendy wants to get to ask both of you guys, if that's okay, and we can kind of proceed to that part, because then we could really get some great information from you. Is that fine?
That's fine.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So one of the questions I have, so I did tee the panelists up in advance for the questions, so these aren't coming out rogue for you guys. But I'm going to skip that first question. And one of the questions that I have, and maybe Perry, you could answer this first, and then Masha will go to you, which is, what part of your utility program works well for you? So why, as a municipality or a retail industry, what is it about the specific program that works well for you?
All right, well, I'm going to start with our industrial program because we've had a lot more success and longevity of experience there. And what I can say is that the consultant who supports Tacoma Power, the Cascade Energy, through their Energy Smart Industrial Program, they bring a lot of resources to our large industrial facilities, which is a fairly complex process facility. There's digesters and stormwater events have big influences on the processes that we do. And so that consistency of professional support to look at the engineering solutions and then translate those to the operators and maintenance, I think is really a big part of the success. On the commercial side, I think they hired excellent subcontractors out of the gate. So both the Stillwater and especially I would say Energy 350 were outstanding people to work with. The control specialist in particular was someone who had a great ability to communicate with our operators of our facilities. And they went from kind of indifference to actually excited to get this work accomplished over the course of the first 2 years. So a couple things I can share there.
Gotcha. So that was just building trust with your controls programmer to make sure that he understands that, no, I know the building.
I'd love to say we had a dedicated controls, but this is the guy who runs the overall operation of that facility.
Okay.
So within his capacity, he has to do the controls. So
yeah,
this is why I might have been neutral about it initially because he had so many other things.
Right. I've been running this building for a long time. I don't have time to focus on this, but actually bringing someone in with a skill set to be able to help support that role is really important in a commercial space. Sure. Masha, how about you? What kind of part of your utility program works really well for you?
Our models really help us, and also the data that we are getting from PGE, the integrated data that we are getting are really assisting us. We are having heat maps for almost all of our stores, and that they are showing us exactly where we are doing wrong and where we are doing correctly. So, and they are easy to read for everyone. So for a long time, we've been working on how to make it easy for everyone to understand. So it's like, hey, if it's red, then that means that something is wrong. Easy. But in general, I think what really help us is that we start making people more involved. As of like, you are not, for example, our marketing department, you are not only the marketing department to make advertisement for us. Now you have to start thinking about energy-wise, what you can do for the energy. And then other departments that we have is that maintenance is not just about changing filters. What can we do with the vendors? How can we make them accountable for what's going through? And so this was small steps for us. Because it was a lot of changes that have to be made, and it was a lot of trust that we have to gain. So maybe at the first year, it was like relamping. It was changing, setting the HVACs correctly. But now we are in like, no, we need this budget to change the whole controllers. We are going to have more BAS systems. So it was kind of like the help that we get to change how the system think, because as you saw on the panels, on the question and answers that a lot of people put, they were like, they are small businesses. They are not maybe thinking about long term, or they are just thinking about the profit at this moment. But it helped us and I think it's good that we have it for 5 years, because it's kind of feel like it should be here.
Gotcha. So having an SEM program that runs multiple years from a small to medium / commercial program, that's what I'm hearing, is that having 1 year isn't enough to get you up and running.
No, it's not. It need more work. It need more commitment. It cannot be one person. If you have one person who's dedicated to this issue, that person will leave the business and it will be gone. You have to make it established in the culture, in the whole business, in the whole organization, as of like, you need a fan, No, that's not how you go and get a fan. This is the process that you have to get to prove that you need a fan. Because at the first year that I joined here, it was like that. Like, I'm hot, let me plug in a fan. You know, good will get donation. We always have a fan somewhere laying around. So it's just like, no, that's not how you do it. Prove to me that you need a fan. Why do you need a fan? If you're hot, read the temperature. Why, when you read the temperature, let me check the controllers and all those things. So it wasn't easy, but at least I think we are going to have the rules in place for people.
Right. And I think that's a difference between the industrial SEM and the commercial SEM, is that industrial SEM, a lot of industrial facilities are talking continuous improvement in the first place. They understand the language that we're bringing to them. I see Perry nodding his head. In the commercial space, in the small to medium business space, you actually have to spend time educating faculty and staff about what continuous improvement is. So you have to lay the foundation first, which means that there's a ramp up almost. And then to your other point, Masha, that I heard was the heat maps, right? Simplifying it across the board so that people can understand what energy you're using.
So creating a culture change, you mentioned continuous improvement, and I think Marcia, sounds like you've done some really excellent work in terms of getting that culture established across many people, not any one key individual, because we know people come and go in and out of organizations. And I would say 5 years is a better horizon than 2 years, because we were cut short at 18 months because of COVID, and we were just starting getting synergy in the second year. So I definitely think 2 years is like a minimum for success, but again, across many people in the organization and creating a culture of change rather than a few champions in a few spaces that come and go.
Right, which means that siloing SEM, like what I'm hearing you say, is that siloing SEM in the commercial space can be a detriment to SEM, because it means that as long as you're in the program, it might last, but if you're not across the organization, or if you're siloed, it might not last, but if you're across the organization, you have a better chance of moving forward once the SEM program leaves. Yeah, that's a good point. So if you guys could have one wish on what your SEM program currently is not doing, but would do for you, what would it be? What's on your wish list of, I keep on asking my coach to do this, or I keep on wanting them to do that. What would it be? What would help you out as a commercial and retail entity?
I think building with an alumni cohort mindset at the time you build your program, because I think that's the deficit right now in the program that I'm working in. That was not really built in. This was a pilot, so they didn't know what they were going to do beyond the pilot, and then COVID has only compounded that. So given all the other things that they could or could not do responding to COVID, their follow-up to the cohort is really subjugated by the fact that they didn't have a plan going into it. And I think that's so if I had any wish, it would be that there's continuity that beyond the initial training periods to support.
Yeah.
And bring new people on who are in the most responsible positions to get the basics and get the understanding.
Yeah, we definitely find that each program wants to pilot it, and then we know you'll see success, and then it's like all of a sudden they're like, well, we want to do it again, but you haven't planned for that 2 year, that second year, that third year program. That's a really good point, Perry, is if you're going to do commercial SEM, think about it in at least a 2 year or an alumni basis. Masha, how about you?
Well, if I have two wishes, okay.
Okay.
First one would be, I really would love to have like that integrating those models with the utility companies to be online and updated. Because what I have at this moment is I have like 43 buildings. Opening and closing each one of those models will take me like around 2 minutes roughly, and then the whole reviewing the platforms, reviewing the charts, it's a time consuming. So that's my wish list for SEM, and I think I've been vocal about it since the past 2 years, like constantly. But in general, what really help us would be having more smaller workshops that we can meet with people who are having the same situations. Maybe, for example, just again, the difference between a small business than a big industrial one is that our maintenance team is a very small maintenance team who do basic works. All of our HVAC set points, setup, checkings, and everything is with contractors. And because we are widespread in Oregon, we have 4 different contractors for that. And one of the issues that we have right now is we don't know how to hold them accountable to our standards. Because it's like, oh, there's an issue. Okay, I go and fix it. And I always make a joke. Like, I ask the person to make sure that the damper is open 40 degree. One of them, the 40 degree was this much, and the other one was this much. And I'm like, I cannot go on up top of every rooftop. So that's one of the things that I really wish for in our SEM program, to know and meet with other businesses who have the same issue with us, same as us, and be like, hey, what was your solution for that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you mentioned about the number of models. And that's something to think about when you go into commercial and small to medium spaces, is that they're going to have more than one model, especially if you're combining gas and electricity into the same program. Odds are your commercial entities, in order to be able to get enough savings, are going to have multiple models. And so how can you streamline that modeling approach, which is really different from the industrial side, which only has 1 to 3, maybe 4 models, right? As Goodwill said, they started with 9 buildings, which was 18 models, and now they're up to 43, right? So that's 86 models that they're, updating it on a regular basis. And Perry, we saw that you had a couple sites too with the campus, so I'm sure that you have a lot of models that you're updating.
Well, actually, no, that was one of the simplifications I think that Tacoma Power did well. By choosing 2 large campuses, we had 2 models to focus on, and your team could track. When I have a multiple disciplinary cross-departmental team, at least we could track 2 models and know we're talking either convention center or police campus. If we got into multiple models, I think I would lose people in the larger team who are not facility managers themselves.
Yeah, that's great. So, so one of the questions I think is, how do you guys expect COVID to continue to impact your energy usage?
Well, it's an interesting contrast. I mean, it's really night and day between these 2 campuses. So I'll start with the police fleet warehouse campus. As you can imagine, police forces are going at the same pace of work that they are always doing. They're maintaining public safety. In fact, they may be a little bit busier given the recent number of activities around anti-racism. So I've seen very consistent use of the police headquarters, and only a small decrease on the fleet side. And, obviously, some of our fleet vehicles are parked now with lack of employees going out and about. But on the convention center, it's down to we're dialing down as low as we can. They don't know if when they're going to have revenue. This could be 18 months from now before the first booked event in our convention center. So an event-based place, COVID is having extreme impacts on in terms of non-revenue and non-utilization. And certainly I'll just talk about our offices because that's the bulk of our, and then again, we are doing some things before we have to return, we call reconstitution, to anticipate. And some of those things are dialing in our buildings to better air quality and trying to get the right mix of outside air and air turnover. There's a lot around how much outside air can benefit with COVID, and so we don't want to go on the extreme of having all outside air. So working with the individual operators to get them to dial that down appropriately.
How about you, Masha?
For 2 months we shut down all of our buildings. The good thing that happened with us was that we were able to finalize the process of shutting down and changing the set points and changing everything in less than 5 days. And that was a great, like 53 buildings, and that was a great hit for us. Not all of them are BAS system. There were some of them that need to be visited and changed. But that was a good thing for us at that point. And then when we reopened everything 2 months ago, we were again successfully set the new schedule. But these schedules are changing as of like some of the stores are open. The hours that they're working are different from previously. And so it's a total new following what's going on and how when they are coming into the store and everything. So it's a lot of information that we needed to be reported to us, and sometimes people are missing them. We had a store that they were like, oh, we are having customers in and all the lights are off. No one told us that you're going to stay open until 8, without that you're still until 7. So we shut down everything. It was a schedule. So that's one of the challenge, is that how to communicate and how to make sure that we are getting information correctly. But the other thing that is going to really affect us is that our goal was to train our employees, not on the way of like, do this to save energy for goodwill, but as of like, do this because this is the right thing to do. We were trying to be able to train them on using different methods in their homes, how they should be concerned, and not just again for goodwill, but how this is how we think that should be a lifestyle. But with the whole COVID thing, we have to stop all of our classes that we go into the stores and we train them. And we are not at the point to do it virtual or through Zoom, because we cannot have like 5 employees from one store in one small conference room. So these things is really affecting us. And so we have to change our plans, and we have to find other solutions to do that.
Great. Greg, it sounded like a comment came in from the chat.
Yeah, the one comment was, for the because you have many, many different sites and you're looking at multitude of different models, the question was, could Goodwill actually utilize the Navigator tool through the 50,001 Ready platform to consolidate models into one platform together, similar to the way other EMIS programs have, a central electronic data platform that can allow you to see those models quite a lot easier than if you were scrolling through them individually.
That would be a good suggestion. We start our 5001 journey this year, and we were hoping, of course, to get it, and then the whole COVID thing happened. We select one store, and we were going to focus on that one store, because if we can do it for one store, that is kind of similar for most of them, so we can just jump and just certain things will change. I don't know if we have time to mention this, but one of the issues that we have is that we call it, of course, in that research I saw also talk about it. It was like how the behavior of people may change, have an effect on our program. So we noticed that exactly in our program, like how when we move one manager from one store to another store, the pattern of energy use change. And I'm like, how? This is the same schedule, same kind of like, it's like that manager have an effect on things that is not scheduling how the HVACs work and how the lightings works. It's like other things. Could it be how they close and open the donation door? Could it be how they close and open the dock doors? So when we select that store to start our 5001, we have our best energy concern manager in that store. Of course, we during this whole shutdown, we kind of lost her ability to work with us. So we have to kind of start everything over. And that was one of the biggest loss that we have concerning COVID SEM 5001.
If I could piggyback on what Masha just said, that in a different way, the differences in level of champions there, we have within our Tacoma Public Utilities, for example, a dedicated facility conservation manager who works side by side with the facility management director. She's able to accomplish a lot. When I talk to her, her reporting out to me is very similar to Masha, very hands-on, able to talk about the technology as well as the people, and very hands-on. I work in the environmental office of sustainability. I'm a policy first and kind of broad program focus. So I don't get down to those levels of detail. I don't work with the facility maintenance people. I don't supervise any of the people who are involved in the actual day-to-day operation of those facilities. But I would say the other thing about our organization that I've learned that is we have certain parts of our organization that are revenue-based and certain part that are general government. And that has a decided difference in terms of what levels of support we can get from the management. The revenue-based ones, we're much more able to tie this in with their ratepayer schedules and their revenue schedules, so they could see this was part of their long-term strategy. General government was saying, well, depending on how that sales tax comes and goes, I may have a third less people next year than I did last year. And so they were much more reticent to make commitments because they had no predictability of the staff they had to work with to accomplish the work.
All right. Well, we are almost out of time. It looks like we had one other question, which was just, Masha, what's your geographical territory?
Like where we are located, all of our stores.
Columbia, yeah.
So Columbia Willamette is like 2 rivers crossing in Oregon. So any store that is located near along those areas is us. For example, Eugene in Oregon is totally different Goodwill.
Gotcha.
But it's not in the Willamette Valley area. So, and I want to say, like, the conversation that is going in the chat is so interesting, and I'm trying to look straight, but at the same time read what's going on in there.
Yeah.
And, like, can I take a screenshot?
I wonder if we can capture the chat and send it out. That's a good question, Masha. So final question, Goodwill, do you use Portfolio Manager to benchmark or track your energy use across your facilities?
Yes, we use Portfolio Manager for for gas, electricity, and water, and hopefully, and we are tracking everything in there also in addition to the SEM models, because as I said, there are some stores like our Washington area, like we have 8 stores, Washington area, that is not part of the Energy Trust of Oregon, of course, and like the SEM, and we are tracking them through the Energy Portfolio Manager.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. I think that really provides insight into how a commercial SEM program could be run, what's needed to run. I think one of the things to note about both the municipalities and retail spaces is that the success that they're seeing is outstanding. I know at least in 1 year, Goodwill saw 12% savings on their gas just from teaching people how to close a door, close their warehouse doors, 12% gas savings. So they have the structure. It's about finding the structure within an organization in order to make it see success, and also utilizing the SEM techniques to be able to do that. So keep up the good work, guys. We also really appreciate everything that you guys do. Thank you.
One more, sorry, can I add one more thing?
Yeah,
if any of you decided to go through the Goodwill of your area and you need a push, count me in.
All right.
All right.
Push other Goodwills to do things. So
that's
Great
right.
to be part of this summit, and yes, thank you so much for the chat. The chat will be helpful if you can send that out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all.
Absolutely. And Masha, Goodwill is across all of America, right? So the United States. So really now there's no excuse not to do a retail SEM program.
Yeah,
Masha's got your first participant.
Yeah, we have this program that we are in sharing our ideas together and what we achieve. So we are here.
Awesome. All right. Well, as we begin to wrap this up, I just wanted to say thank you. And one of the things that we wanted to just get your feedback on is kind of what are your guys's, Chad, next steps, I believe is the question, right, for the Mentimeter?
Oh, yeah. So go back to Mentimeter. Oh, this one. What did you learn at the SEM Summit?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, what did you learn? So go back to menti.com, type in these numbers, 8624856. They're shown on your screen. What did you learn at the SEM Summit that will inform how you go forward? I wrote all these notes down. These are my notes. I'm doing all these things. Lots of stuff. Seeing some good responses come in. People talking about internships, connections, chatting with people. That's so lovely.
Crunchy nut butter only.
Yeah. That was a funny one. I like Faith's message on that. That's great.
Still opportunity for growth, absolutely.
Maybe challenges, yep.
Yeah, and so for the potential small to medium business engagement, one of the things that I've always championed is think about ways you can incorporate small to medium businesses into your current cohorts or into your large cohorts, right? So start thinking outside of the box. It doesn't just have to be industrial. It could be universities and school districts, universities and municipalities, university and retail. Start thinking about ways to subsidize the smaller folks with the larger folks that are hitting it out of the park so that you can maintain cost effectiveness. Love the high school internship program. Absolutely. OG&E is definitely not the only one that's doing that. There are other internship programs, but it's really a great way to marry the SEM with the workforce development, which is wonderful. So if you're looking for other ideas, reach out to us and we can try to connect you. Sure. Yes, that some of the M&B folks don't already know each other and we need a site level working group. Yeah, that would be great. That's something that we can help with. Yep. Great. Yeah, how 50,000 ready is starting to be used.
And maybe we let this keep going and then we can hit some of our closing thoughts, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I'll go back here.
Yeah. All right. So the next thing is we want you. We want you in a couple ways. So next slide. All right. So we want you to join the leadership team. As I mentioned at the last webinar, we are having some of our leadership team members roll off in order to better align with our needs, which I'll go over in a minute. We're looking for support from the North American SEM Collaborative in general. If you like what we're doing, we want to be able to continue to do it. And then from an event sponsor standpoint, you will always be able to sponsor the summit. So that's a great way to just be able to provide support to the summit space. I just wanted to highlight those are great ways to be involved. And then let's move on to leadership team recruitment. So as I mentioned, we are beginning with leadership team recruitment. So we are looking for the makeup for our SEM North American leadership team, 2 to 4 SEM program administrators, 2 to 4 SEM professionals, which is implementers and evaluators, 1 to 2 representatives of RIOs, and 1 to 3 other SEM related roles. So some ad hoc ones that we're not quite familiar with. We'd like at least 1 representative from each region of North America, which obviously includes Canada, and at least 4 members from traditionally underrepresented populations. So as we start to go through our changeover in leadership team staff, that is what we're looking for. Next slide. So the time commitment, I just wanted to make sure people were aware of. So we do monthly leadership team meetings. I would say actually the last year they've been twice a month, just because as we get up and running, it's been a bit of a heavy lift. Serving on ad hoc committees, for instance, we have 1 leadership team member leading the funded research part. We have another leadership team member leading the negative savings group, another leadership team member that was basically focusing on the SEM Summit. And then we also need to support fundraising efforts. So these are kind of the level of commitment that you're looking at. The term is 3 years, not necessarily in the same role, but that is the time frame that we're looking at. So speaking of time frame, Chad, so the recruitment process. So we will send out an email this week announcing kind of officially in writing the recruitment for the leadership team. It'll have a survey asking you questions just about who you are, why you want to join the team. And then it will close at the beginning of September. We will review the responses and then come to a decision by the 1st of October, and then we'll transition through November, and you'll kick off in January when the previous LT members will be rolling off, and we'll have an initial November meeting on that day. So we really encourage you to decide to participate in the leadership team. I think I can speak for the whole team when we say it's been a really great process. I didn't know many of the people in the leadership team until I joined the leadership team, and it's been a really great experience. And I feel like I've learned so much from being on the leadership team, from the great people that are here. We will be focusing on making sure that we have a diverse leadership team, and we will be focusing on making sure that we have the types of industry representatives that we want. So just know that. And then the last thing we have here is coming in January, our goal, kind of kicking off 2021, will be to solidify the way that we're asking for your support. We recently did surveys and kind of interviews with different implementers, program administrators, evaluators, others in the industry, RIOs, asking kind of, how would you be willing to financially support us in continuing the collaborative? And the reason why is that even though the leadership team is voluntary, we do work with ACEEE, and ACEEE does actually do work for us. We're funding the research paper. We have to pay for the SEM Summit. So we're just looking to get the costs back, and your support will allow us to be able to continue to, expand and establish SEM best practices, like starting the negative savings working group, right? Continue to engage in funded research, and hopefully continue to have this conversation around DEI in a way that can move everybody forward. Any last questions, comments in the chat as we wrap up here?
I don't see any right now.
No?
No, most of it's been saying, Masha, you're awesome. I think there was there were nomination for her to lead the leadership team, I think. Yeah.
Well, all right, Masha, congratulations. All right, well, the last slide then. Thanks for coming. Thanks for weathering a 4-hour virtual workshop. Don't forget to fill out the survey, which is in your chat box. We appreciate you helping us build a better together. So thank you.